I am Supreme Security Director Scanselin of the Shaneth Imperium, and I detest inefficiency. This is why I find myself increasingly disturbed by the reports flooding my desk as I conduct my inspection of Central Frenes Station Echo 91. Once the greatest trading hub in the Carina Arm, now requisitioned as our forward command center against the human expansion. Director, the new security protocols have been implemented in sectors 17 through 42. My assistant, Subdirector Srevli, announces as we pass a patrol of Mark 7 battle droids. Their optical sensors flash in recognition of my authority before they resume their perfect formation. Perfect, precise, predictable, as all things should be. Casualties from the Procyon engagement? I inquire, though I already know the answer will displease me. Srevli's secondary breathing bladders inflate slightly, a telling sign of discomfort. 3 cruisers lost, 7 damaged beyond immediate repair, approximately 12,000 battle droids destroyed. And the humans? 1 vessel confirmed destroyed, 2 damaged. I halt my stride so abruptly that Srevli nearly collides with me. The massive promenade of Echo 91 stretches before us, once bustling with merchants from 1,000 worlds, now transformed into a staging area for our war machine. Droid carriers and weapon systems fill the spaces where exotic goods were once traded. Explain to me, I say with dangerous calm, how a species that has barely achieved reliable interstellar travel less than 2 centuries ago continues to defy the military might of an empire that spans 17% of this galaxy. Srevli's skin shifts to a deeper shade of blue. Director, I've compiled the latest intelligence. It appears the humans have deployed their specialized combat units again. You mean the ones with the primitive weapons? Yes, Director. The units they call Texas Knights. A group of merchant caste Shanaths scurry past us, their conversation abruptly halting as they recognize my rank insignia. I barely notice them. My attention is fixed on the report Srevli has handed me. The footage is fragmented, communications disruption being a hallmark of human engagements, but clear enough to turn my blood cold. Shaneth battle droids, the pinnacle of our autonomous weapons technology, falling before humans in peculiar armored suits. Humans wielding swords? This cannot be accurate, I mutter, though I know our recording systems are incapable of falsification. They are using primitive cutting implements against quantum-shielded battle platforms? The weapons appear to be energized, Director. Our analysis suggests they incorporate quantum distortion fields that interact with our shield harmonics in unpredictable ways. I hand the report back with a sharp gesture. Unpredictable is unacceptable. Unpredictable should not be possible. We resume our inspection route, passing through the former diplomatic sector, now converted to a strategic command center. Through transparent partitions, I observe our finest military minds plotting combat scenarios, charting hyperspace vectors, calculating engagement probabilities, all of them searching for the pattern that will allow us to finally contain the human threat. Have we captured any of these knights, I ask? 1, Director. 3 standard cycles ago. The human is being held in high-security containment on level 94. I alter our course immediately. The security personnel at the detention levels snap to alertness as I approach, their postures registering appropriate levels of respect and fear. I wish to interrogate the human captive, I announce. The security officer blinks all 4 eyes in sequence, a sign of concern. Director, the prisoner has been difficult. Traditional interrogation methods have proven ineffective. We've had to resort to chemical measures, and even those have yielded limited results. Meaning our procedures have failed? Not failed, Director. The human simply responds unpredictably. They resist in ways we haven't encountered before. That word again, unpredictable. A concept that should not exist in modern warfare. Open the cell, I order. The containment field shimmers as it reconfigures to allow my entry while maintaining security parameters. Inside, sitting with a posture that suggests neither fear nor concern, is a human, female according to our biological reference data. Her outer armor has been removed, leaving her in what appears to be a form-fitting black undergarment. What strikes me immediately is her apparent calm. Prisoners typically exhibit stress responses when confronted by a Shanat of my rank. This human simply looks curious. "Well now," she says in strangely accented galactic standard, "y'all must be the big boss. Fancy coat you got there." I do not respond to her primitive attempt at establishing rapport. Instead, I activate the room's scanning suite, gathering data on her biological status and potential threats. The scan results are concerning. "You show no signs of fear," I state, "yet you must understand your situation." The human smiles, an expression I know is meant to indicate amusement rather than aggression. "Ain't about understanding, Director. It's about accepting." "Explain." "Look at you," she says, gesturing with a casual wave. "All these fancy sensors and machines. You're so busy looking for complex answers that you miss the simple ones." I feel my patience fracturing. "You are a primitive species wielding archaic weapons. You should be eradicated by our battle platforms within minutes of engagement. Instead, you continue to defy probability. Explain how, or your containment conditions will become significantly less comfortable." The human leans forward, and for a moment I detect something dangerous in her expression. Not fear, something worse. Confidence. "You want to know why we're beating you?" she asks. "It's because y'all forgot something important about warfare, something basic." "And what might that be?" "That war ain't just about technology, it's about will, about spirit." She taps her chest. "About what's in here. You send machines to fight your battles because you think warfare is just math, just probabilities and patterns." "War is mathematics," I respond, somewhat affronted by her primitive concept. "Resources, trajectories, force calculations." "War is chaos," she interrupts. "War is chaos," she interrupts. "Always has been. You try to make it orderly, but that ain't its nature. That's why we're winning, because we embrace the chaos. We ride it like a wild horse." I prepare to leave, having heard enough of this philosophical nonsense. But her next words freeze me in place. "You know why we use swords, Director? Real reason?" Against my better judgment, I turn back. "Enlighten me." "Because they're personal. Because when you fight with a blade, you're not just pressing buttons from orbit. You're there, in the moment, feeling the weight of your decisions. Your droids fight because they're programmed to. We fight because we choose to." A guard appears at the doorway. "An urgent report from our outer defense perimeter." I dismiss him for the moment, oddly compelled by this human's barbaric philosophy. "And the helmets?" I ask, referencing the distinctive headgear their knights wear. "Those serve what primitive psychological purpose?" The human's smile widens. "That's just a Stetson, Director. Part of the uniform. Tradition, you might say." "Tradition has no place in modern warfare." "And that's why you're losing?" The guard returns, insistence evident in his posture. This time I accept the report. What I see causes my skin to blanch to a pale gray. 3 human vessels have emerged from hyperspace at the edge of our defense grid. Small vessels, by our standards, barely worthy of notice, except for the fact that our outer sensors are going offline in sequence. "Right on time," the human prisoner remarks, glancing at the blank wall as if she can somehow sense what's happening. "That'll be the cavalry." "Impossible," I hiss. "You have no way of knowing." "Don't need to know, just need to have faith in my squadron. We made a pact. Nobody gets left behind enemy lines. Texas Knights keep their promises. My security clearance allows me to receive updates on the defense grid status in real time. The pattern of system failures is unlike anything in our combat databases. No electronic warfare we've encountered could penetrate our defenses with such unpredictability," I whisper. "Bingo," the human says with a wink. "Now, I suggest you might want to clear this level. Things are about to get a little rowdy." I back away from the containment field, issuing emergency commands to the guards. "Full alert! All battle droids to defensive positions. Activate all internal security measures." "Won't help," the human comments casually. "You're thinking in straight lines again. My friends don't much care for straight lines." The station's artificial gravity fluctuates momentarily. a subtle shift that would be imperceptible to most species, but I feel it, and so does the human. Her smile turns predatory. That's them now, she says. Reckon they're about to introduce themselves properly. I rush from the detention level, Strevely struggling to keep pace as I issue commands to every security system on the station. Battle droids move with perfect precision to their assigned positions. Defense grids power up in mathematically optimal patterns. Every countermeasure deployed according to the most advanced tactical algorithms in the known galaxy. We reach the command center as the first visual confirmation of intruders arrives. Fragmented security feeds showing armored figures moving through the station. Their armor resembles the prisoners, but now I can see the full ensemble. The distinctive helmet. The Stetson sits atop enclosed combat armor, emblazoned with a single star. And the swords. The swords leave trails of blue energy that our sensors cannot properly analyze. Where they pass, our systems fail, not from damage, but from what appears to be reality itself becoming uncertain. What is this? I demand of our chief tactical officer. What weapon creates these effects? Unknown, Director, the officer responds, his voice tight with stress. The energy signatures don't match any known technology. They appear to be generating quantum fields that shouldn't be stable at that scale. On the monitors, I watch as our battle droids engage the intruders. The droids move with perfect precision, their targeting systems identifying optimal attack vectors, their networked intelligence adjusting tactics in microsecond intervals. They are being slaughtered. The humans move with a fluidity that defies prediction. Their swords, those primitive, barbaric weapons, somehow intercept energy beams, disrupting quantum shields that should be impenetrable to physical objects. Worse, they appear to be communicating through means our systems cannot detect, coordinating their movements with impossible precision. How many intruders, I demand? 7, Director, just 7 humans. 7, against thousands of battle droids and the most advanced security systems in the Carina arm. Sector 42 has been breached, an analyst reports. They appear to be heading directly for the detention level. Of course they are. They're coming for their comrade. Seal all intervening bulkheads, flood those sections with neurotoxins, deploy heavy weapons platforms. I pause, then make a decision that reflects our growing desperation, and deploy the elite guard. Silence falls over the command center at this last order. The elite guard, actual Shanath warriors, have not been deployed in actual combat for 7 generations. We have relied on our battle droids for so long that the art of personal combat has become nearly ceremonial among our kind. But these humans have forced our hand. Director, the Chief of Staff says carefully, the elite guard are untested in actual combat conditions. Then this will be their baptism, I reply coldly. If these humans insist on personal combat, we shall meet them on their terms. The commands are executed. On the monitors, I watch as bulkheads slam shut, isolating the intruders. Satisfaction flickers briefly, until I see one of the humans approach a sealed door. They place their hand on the surface, and the quantum-locked security barrier simply fails. Not hacked, not damaged, it's as if the underlying laws of physics that govern its operation are briefly suspended. Impossible, I whisper. The neurotoxin deployment registers as successful, filling the corridors with concentrations lethal to every known sentient species. The humans advance through the deadly fog as if it's nothing more than mild weather. Their armor should not be capable of filtering toxins at that molecular weight, yet they proceed unaffected. Director, Svadli says urgently, tactical analysis suggests we should evacuate priority personnel. We cannot predict. Stop using that word, I snarl. There must be a pattern. There must be logic to their movements. Nothing can truly be unpredictable. The universe does not operate that way. But as I watch the knights carve their way through our defenses, I begin to understand what the prisoner meant. These humans aren't fighting according to any recognizable doctrine. Each movement seems simultaneously improvised and practiced, as if they're participating in some chaotic dance where the steps are known only to them. The heavy weapons platforms engage, concentrated energy beams that can slice through capital ship armor, fire in converging patterns, a mathematical certainty that nothing could survive such a crossfire. The knights move between the beams as if they can see the mathematics themselves, finding impossible gaps in the firing solution. One of them actually deflects a beam with their sword, redirecting it into another weapons platform. Then, finally, they encounter our elite guard, 12 Sheneth warriors, the finest our species has produced in generations, each armed with energy staves that mimic the human sword technology. They have studied the combat footage, analyzed the movements, prepared countermeasures. The first engagement is brutal and swift. Our warriors, for all their training, have never experienced actual combat against a determined enemy. The humans move with a fluid grace that makes our carefully choreographed combat forms seem rigid and predictable by comparison. The first warrior falls within seconds, his staff technique perfect according to our ancient manuals, yet somehow wholly inadequate against the human's improvisational style. The second and third attack in tandem, executing a pincer movement that should be indefensible. The human knight spins between them, their sword leaving that distinctive blue trail as it severs the staff of one warrior and disables the armor of the other. Not kills, disables. This realization hits me with unexpected force. The humans are not slaughtering our warriors as they did our droids. They are disabling, disarming, incapacitating, but not killing. "Director," the chief tactical officer calls out, "they've reached attention level 94. On the monitor, I watch as 3 knights approach the cell containing their comrade. The security systems activate, creating a quantum barrier that should be impenetrable. One of the knights steps forward, raises their sword, and makes a pattern in the air, a simple geometric figure that makes no tactical sense. The barrier collapses. "Yee-haw!" I hear the prisoner exclaim through the security feed as she's reunited with her team. One of the knights hands her a spare suit of armor and, most disturbingly, a sword of her own. "Took y'all long enough. Had to wait for the proper timing," one of the rescuers replies, their voice distorted by their helmet systems. "Wouldn't be sporting otherwise." Sporting? As if this is some kind of primitive competition rather than warfare. "Director, they're heading for the central transportation hub," an analyst reports. "If they reach it, they could access any part of the station." I make a decision. Initiate Containment Protocol Omega-7. Seal and decompress all sectors between their current position and the transportation hub. It's a drastic measure, one that will kill hundreds of our own personnel still in those sectors, but against an enemy that defies conventional tactics. Conventional morality must sometimes be suspended. The order is executed. On the environmental monitors, I watch as the atmosphere vents from multiple sectors, creating a vacuum zone that no being could traverse without specialized equipment. The knights pause at the edge of the decompressed zone. For a moment, I feel a surge of satisfaction, finally a limitation they cannot overcome. Then, to my horror, they adjust something on their boots, devices that flare with blue energy, and step out into the vacuum as if it's solid ground. The energy trails from their boots interact with the vacuum itself, creating what appears to be localized packets of atmosphere around each step. "What am I seeing?" I demand. "Explain this." "Director," the science officer responds, his voice shaking. "They appear to be using some form of quantum field manipulation to create temporary pockets of... It's as if they're bringing their own environment with them, but the energy requirements for such technology would be beyond their capabilities," I finish. "Yet they are doing it." "Yes, Director, they are." I watch, transfixed, as the knights traverse the vacuum, their movements even more fluid, without atmosphere to create resistance. Their rescued comrade follows, clearly familiar with the technique. "Where are they going?" I ask, though I already suspect the answer. "Analysis of their trajectory suggests our central command center, Director." "Of course. They aren't just here for a rescue, they intend to cripple our operations. Evacuate all essential personnel from the command center. Transfer control functions to the secondary facility. Prepare my personal shuttle." Skrevely stares at me with all 4 eyes wide. Director, are we retreating? We are reassessing, I reply, not meeting his gaze, and implementing our final option. I turn to the communications officer. Send the signal to deploy our reserve forces, all of them. The officer hesitates, four-fingered hands hovering over the controls. Director, that would mean… I know what it means, I interrupt sharply. Every Sheneth citizen with basic combat training, every available warrior not currently assigned to critical defense, every medical officer, engineer, and scientist with the physical capability to hold a weapon, deploy them all. It is an admission of desperation I never thought I would make. For generations, we have prided ourselves on our technological superiority, on our ability to wage war without risking our own precious lives. Our battle droids have been our proxies, our shields, our way of maintaining our civilization's comfort even as we expanded our control across the stars. Now, we are committing our own flesh and blood to combat against these barbaric humans and their impossible swords. On the monitor, I watch the Knights approach the final barrier before the command center, our most formidable security measure. A phase-locked quantum barrier that requires specific frequency keys that change every nanosecond. The lead knight stops, seems to consider the barrier for a moment, then turns to the others. They raise their swords in unison, and the quantum energies from their blades coalesce into a pattern that our sensors cannot interpret. The barrier flickers, destabilizes, and then simply disappears. "Director," Strevely says urgently, "our shuttle is ready." I nod but remain watching the monitors for another moment. The Knights have entered the now evacuated command center. Instead of destroying it, as I expected, they gather around the central tactical display. The rescued prisoner points to something, coordinates, perhaps. One of the others produces a device that interfaces with our systems in ways that should be impossible. What are they doing? I wonder aloud. "Director, we must go now," Strevely insists. I finally turn away from the monitors, allowing myself to be escorted to the emergency shuttle bay. As we move through the corridors, I notice the station's systems behaving erratically. Lights flickering in patterns, gravity shifting subtly, even the automated doors opening with what seems like hesitation. They've infected our central systems, I realize. Not with a virus or hack, but with something else, something unpredictable. We reach the shuttle and I pause before boarding. To my shock, the female knight stands at the end of the corridor, her sword sheathed, her stance relaxed. She has removed her helmet, revealing features that would be considered attractive by human standards. "Leaving so soon, Director," she calls out, "and here I thought we were just getting to know each other." My guards raise their weapons, but I gesture for them to hold. "What do you want?" I demand. She approaches with a casual stride that belies the deadliness I've witnessed in their kind. "Just thought you might want to know something before you run back to your high command with tales of Texas witchcraft." And what might that be? Her smile is cold, calculating. Nothing like the brash confidence she displayed in her cell. My capture wasn't an accident. It was strategy. Impossible. No one would willingly submit to, it's called psychological warfare, Director. Ancient human concept. See, we knew you'd bring in your top brass to interrogate a knight, knew you'd assemble your best tactical minds to figure us out. She gestures to the station around us. Knew you'd concentrate your command structure in one convenient location. Cold dread settles in my gut. You allowed yourself to be captured. Bingo! She taps her temple. And while your fancy machines were trying to read my thoughts, my quantum spurs were reading your systems. Every scan you ran gave us more access, more data. By the time my friends showed up, we already knew every weakness in this station. Are you telling me this? I ask, genuinely confused by this breach of tactical advantage. Because I want you to understand. Her expression turns serious. This war you started, it's not going the way you planned. Not because our technology is better, but because you've forgotten what real warfare is about. It's about people, flesh and blood, courage and fear, things your battle droids can't understand. She reaches up to adjust her Stetson, that ridiculous headgear that somehow seems more menacing than comical now. Y'all have been fighting with proxies for so long you've forgotten how to fight yourselves. Now you're sending your people into battle, but they don't know what's waiting for them. Is that a threat? I ask, my voice stiffer than I intend. No, Director. It's an opportunity. She removes something from her belt, a small device that she slides across the floor toward me. Frequency codes, shield harmonics, tactical overrides, everything you need to disable a Texas Knight's armor and weapons. I stare at the device, unable to comprehend this gesture. Why would you give us this? Because even with it, you still won't win unless you understand what you're really fighting against. She taps her chest. This, the human spirit, the thing your machines can't calculate and your warriors have forgotten. She backs away, her quantum spurs leaving those distinctive blue trails on the deck plating. We'll be waiting for your people, Director, not your machines, your people. And when they come, we'll show them what real combat is about. Sword to sword, will against will. You would prefer that? I ask, genuinely perplexed, even knowing we outnumber you billions to one? Her laugh echoes down the corridor. Numbers don't win wars, Director, never have. It's always been about heart, about conviction, about looking your enemy in the eye and deciding what you're willing to sacrifice. She turns to leave, then pauses. Oh, and Director, that device is genuine, no tricks. Consider it a gift from Texas. We want a fair fight. With that, she is gone, leaving me holding a device that could potentially turn the tide of this war, yet somehow feeling more uncertain than ever. Send a message to High Command, I tell Srevli as we board the shuttle. Tell them we need to reconsider our approach to this conflict. These humans, these knights, they don't fight as we do. They don't think as we do. I pause, looking down at the device in my hand. And tell them that our reserve forces will need new training, not just in technology, but in the ancient arts our ancestors practiced, the personal combat forms we have relegated to ceremonial displays. Director? Srevli sounds confused. If we're going to fight humans with swords, I explain, we need to remember what it means to be warriors, not just commanders of machines. As our shuttle departs from Echo 9-1, I watch the station receding through the viewport. It appears outwardly unchanged, yet I know that something fundamental has shifted within its systems. The humans didn't destroy it. They altered it in ways our sensors can barely detect. Director, the pilot calls back. I'm receiving a transmission. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, originating from the station. Let me hear it, I command. A human voice fills the shuttle cabin, carrying that distinctive accent that I now recognize as belonging to their Texas Knights. Attention, Shanad forces, this here station is now under the protection of the Texas Knights. You all might notice your systems acting a bit peculiar. That's because we've introduced them to a little concept called quantum uncertainty. Your battle droids might start getting ideas of their own. Your computers might develop a taste for what we call country music. And your command codes, well, let's just say they're learning to operate on principles your engineers never programmed. There's a pause. Then the voice continues, more serious now. We could have destroyed this station and everyone on it. That's not our way. Instead, we're leaving you a message. There are some things in this universe that can't be calculated, can't be predicted, can't be controlled. The human spirit is one of them. Y'all would do well to remember that before you come at us again. The transmission ends with a musical sequence that makes no tactical sense whatsoever, yet somehow feels like a declaration of victory more profound than any I've encountered in my long military career. I think back to the knight's words, about psychological warfare, about the human spirit, about the personal nature of combat with a blade rather than a remote weapon. Barbaric, I mutter, yet I cannot deny the effectiveness of their approach. Perhaps there is something to be learned from this encounter, something that our battle computers have missed. As our shuttle jumps to hyperspace, I find myself considering a disturbing possibility. What if predictability itself is a weakness? What if our reliance on patterns and mathematics has blinded us to a fundamental truth about the universe? What if the humans, with their primitive weapons and inexplicable tactics, have discovered something we forgot long ago? I take out my personal journal, creating a new entry. I title it, Strategic Analysis, the Unpredictable Variable in Combat Doctrine. And for the first time in my career, I begin to write without first calculating the optimal structure for my report. Instead, I simply let the thoughts flow, embracing just slightly the chaos that the humans seem to navigate so effortlessly. Perhaps there is something to be learned from barbarians who resurrect swords in an age of quantum weapons. Perhaps in their primitive approach, they have stumbled upon a profound truth that our civilization, for all its advancement, has forgotten. Perhaps unpredictability is not a flaw in the universe's design, but a feature we have failed to utilize. And perhaps, just perhaps, a sword in the hand of a determined warrior is still the most dangerous weapon of all, especially when that warrior wears a Stetson and fights with a spirit no machine can match. I am Supreme Security Director Scanselin of the Shanath Imperium, and I detest failure, specifically my own. The shuttle's viewport reveals the armada we've assembled to reclaim Central Frennis Station Echo 9-1. 1 month has passed since my humiliating retreat. 1 month of High Command's subtle disdain. 1 month of preparing for this moment, a significant military operation, though hardly unprecedented in scale. Final Fleet Status Report. I command, not turning from the viewport. Subdirector Srevli, still assigned to me despite my disgrace, consults his data terminal. All capital ships report ready, Director. The 150,000 organic troops are deployed across the assault vessels. Battle droid contingents are at full operational capacity, 19.725 billion units ready for deployment. A standard commitment for a station of this size, Fleet Commander Vinith observes with a dismissive flick of his secondary appendages, though perhaps slightly above average given the unusual nature of the opposition. Vinith joined us 3 cycles ago, assigned personally by High Command to ensure this operation succeeds. The unspoken implication to ensure I don't fail again. The intelligence reports from our remaining agents on the station are concerning, I note, reviewing the data streams. The humans have not only maintained station operations, they've expanded them. Trading volume has actually increased since their takeover. Selective embargo, Vinith says with distaste. They've prohibited only shipments that could be used for our war effort, weapons-grade materials, quantum stabilizers, graviton suppressors. Everything else flows freely. A clever strategy, I admit reluctantly. They win allies among the merchant guilds while simultaneously crippling our military supply chains. It cannot stand, Vinith declares firmly. Those resources are essential to the war effort. High Command has made retrieval of the embargoed materials our secondary objective after securing the station itself. The tactical officer interrupts. Director, long-range scans are complete. We're detecting approximately 75,000 human life signs aboard the station, in addition to the usual complement of traders, merchants, and station personnel. This catches me by surprise. 75? 0? That far exceeds the night contingent we encountered before. Marine detachments, Slevli explains, consulting his intelligence briefing. Standard human military forces deployed as customs officials and security personnel. They're maintaining order and enforcing their selective embargo policies. I consider this new information carefully. The Texas Knights had been formidable enough, warriors who defied conventional tactics with their impossible quantum-enhanced weapons. But conventional human Marines would be more predictable, more manageable. Dropping from hyperspace in 30 seconds, the tactical officer announces. I turn fully to the viewport, watching as the swirling vortex of hyperspace dissolves into the star-flecked blackness of normal space. Echo 9-1 appears before us, its massive structure seemingly unchanged since my departure. The familiar rings of its commercial docks, the central administrative sphere, the radiating defensive platforms, all appear to be functioning normally. But unlike my expectations, the station is not dormant. It bristles with activity. Commercial vessels of various species dock and depart in orderly procession. Trading ships transfer cargo under the watchful eye of what must be those human marines. And the defensive systems? They're active, but not at full alert, as if the humans were expecting us but not particularly concerned. Incoming transmission from the station, the communications officer reports. Put it through, I order. A familiar voice fills the command deck, the drawling accent I've come to associate with the Texas nights. Well now, look who's back. Director Scanselin thought you might be paying us a visit sooner or later. Welcome back to the neighborhood. Identify yourself, I demand, though I already have a strong suspicion who is speaking. Colonel Mackenzie Clarkson, Texas Night 5th Regiment, current administrator of Central Frinnis Station, Echo 9-1, the same female who had been our prisoner. I see you've brought quite the welcoming party. The station belongs to the Shaneth Imperium, Veneth interjects. You will surrender it immediately or face the consequences. A light chuckle comes through the channel. Afraid that's not gonna happen, friend. We've got ourselves a nice operation running here. Trade's up 23% under our management, security incidents are down 47%, and the merchant guilds just voted to extend our administration contract another 6 months. You're embargoing essential materials bound for Sheneth space, I state, keeping my tone level. This is an act of war. Selective enforcement of contraband regulations, she corrects smoothly. Standard practice during military conflicts. We're just making sure weapons-grade materials don't contribute to civilian casualties. Everything else flows freely. Food, medicine, consumer goods. We're not monsters, Director. Veneth leans closer to me, lowering his voice. They're stalling. Deploying defensive measures while we talk. He's right. The station's shield grid is powering up incrementally. Not the sudden surge of emergency protocols, but the methodical activation of a well-planned defense. Enough diplomacy, Veneth declares, straightening to his full height. Deploy the first wave of droids, standard infiltration pattern. I don't countermand him, though a sense of unease grows within me. The casual confidence in Clarkson's voice reminds me of our last encounter, when 7 nights had decimated thousands of our most advanced battle droids. Initial wave deploying, the tactical officer confirms as the first shuttles accelerate toward the station's docking rings. Well now, that's not very neighborly, Clarkson comments, still on the open channel. Guess we'll have to respond in kind. Just remember, you started this dance. The transmission cuts off. All vessels, battle stations, Veneth commands. Prepare main weapons arrays. Once our droids secure the primary docking bays, we'll deploy organic troops to... Enemy vessels detected, the sensor officer interrupts, his voice rising with alarm. Multiple signatures emerging from behind the station's outer rings, the tactical display updates showing what had been hidden from our initial scans. Human combat vessels, not massive dreadnoughts like ours, but smaller, more maneuverable craft, swarming from concealed positions within the station's structure. Clever, I murmur. They nested their ships inside the commercial docks. A minor complication, Veneth dismisses. Our capital ships will... A series of explosions ripples across our front line as the human vessels open fire, their weapons quantum-tipped missiles and energy beams that leave those distinctive blue trails slice through our forward screens with disturbing precision. Return fire, Veneth orders. All batteries full spread. Our dreadnoughts respond, massive energy cannons discharging toward the station and its defending vessels, but the humans are already moving. Their smaller ships darting between our carefully calculated firing solutions with that same unpredictable fluidity I remember from the nights. Meanwhile, our droid transports reach the docking bays. Unlike my fears, they aren't immediately repelled. The bays open, permitting our forces entry in what seems too easy a victory. First wave has secured docking clusters 7 through 12, the tactical officer reports. Encountering minimal resistance, deploying second and third waves now. Veneth's skin flushes with confidence. See, Director? For all their unusual tactics, when faced with overwhelming force, they... Status update on first wave, the tactical officer interrupts, his voice suddenly tense. We've lost contact with approximately 30% of the deployed units. What? Vinith's confidence evaporates. How? I step closer to the tactical display, studying the data streams. They're being selectively hacked, not all at once, just enough to create confusion without revealing their full capabilities. Impossible, Vinith insists. The new security protocols are being bypassed somehow, I finish for him, not throughout the entire force, but enough to disrupt our advance. The display updates again as internal feeds from the station begin to transmit. What I see confirms my suspicions. In certain corridors, our battle droids have turned on each other, creating chaotic firefights that block critical junctions. In others, droids simply shut down, becoming obstacles for the units behind them. And now we see the human Marines. Armored soldiers without the distinctive Stetsons of the Knights, but effective nonetheless. They fight in tight formations, their conventional weapons proving surprisingly effective against our droids when deployed with precision. They're channeling our forces, I realize aloud, creating killing zones where our numerical advantage becomes irrelevant. Vinith ignores my analysis. Deploy waves 4 through 7, overwhelm them with numbers. More transports surge toward the station carrying millions of additional battle droids. Some are intercepted by the human vessels, exploding in brilliant flashes against the backdrop of space. Others reach the docking bays, disgorging their mechanical warriors into the growing chaos. Director, Srevli says quietly from beside me, perhaps we should consider deploying our organic troops now while we still control some of the docking areas. Before I can respond, the tactical display flashes with new alerts. 8 signatures moving with impossible speed through the debris field of destroyed vessels. The Texas Knights have entered the battle. Unlike the Marines with their conventional tactics, the Knights move like forces of nature. Their small personal craft, hardly more than enhanced combat suits, dart between capital ships, leaving trails of quantum disruption in their wake. Where they pass, systems fail, weapons misfire, shields fluctuate. Target those 8 signatures, Vinith commands, frustration evident in his voice. All available point defense systems, a storm of energy beams converges on the Knights' positions, or where they should be. Somehow they're no longer there when the beams arrive, having anticipated the attack with uncanny precision. They're heading for our command ship, the tactical officer warns. I watch as 3 of the Knight signatures change course, accelerating directly toward our position. No evasive pattern, no attempt to avoid our defensive fire, just straight-line speed that should make them easy targets. Should. Somehow the defensive batteries miss, not by random chance, but as if the Knights are threading the impossibly narrow gaps between firing solutions, finding the mathematical blind spots in our targeting algorithms. Prepare for boarding action, I order, drawing my ceremonial energy staff. It won't be much use against quantum swords, but it's better than facing them unarmed. This is absurd, Vinith protests. They can't possibly penetrate our... The ship shudders as something impacts the hull. Not an explosion, more like a precise surgical strike. Alarms blare as atmospheric containment is breached in a lower section. 3 intruders detected in Sector 17, the security officer reports, moving toward the command deck. I make a decision. Deploy our organic troops, all of them. Focus on securing the embargoed materials in storage sections 42A through 49C. That's our priority now. What about the station itself? Vinith demands. A secondary objective, I reply. If we can't hold it, we'll at least deny them the resources they've been withholding. Vinith looks ready to countermand my order, but the tactical situation has deteriorated too far for even his stubborn confidence. He nods curtly and the command is relayed. Our 150,000 Shenat warriors, many of them station security personnel being punished alongside me, deploy toward the station in heavily armored transports. Unlike the droid vessels, these are equipped with additional shielding and point defense systems. They've trained for this moment, knowing they might face the Knights and their quantum weapons. Meanwhile, the battle in space intensifies. Our capital ships, designed for long-range engagement against conventional opponents, struggle against the human vessels that dart inside our optimal firing solutions. For every human craft we destroy, we lose multiple ships of our own. Knights approaching command deck, the security officer warns. Estimated breach in 30 seconds. I reach into my ceremonial robes, retrieving the small device Clarkson gave me during our last encounter, the one containing quantum frequencies and shield harmonics that should, in theory, disable their weapons and armor. Evacuate all non-essential personnel, I order. Commander Zenith, you should withdraw to the secondary command center. I will not retreat from humans, he snarls, drawing his own energy weapon. The doors to the command deck shudder, not from an explosion, but from some kind of quantum disruption that makes the molecular bonds in the metal briefly forget how to hold together. They simply part, like curtains being drawn aside. 3 knights step through. Their armor bears the scorch marks of weapons fire, but they move with undiminished confidence. Their quantum spurs leave those distinctive blue trails across the deck plating, and their swords, those impossible weapons that combine ancient design with physics-defying technology, hewn with barely contained energy. Director Scanselin, the lead knight greets me, voice distorted through his helmet. Been a while. Still got that stick up your backside about proper military doctrine? I recognize the voice, one of the knights who had participated in Clarkson's rescue. You're outnumbered, I reply, trying to project calm authority. We have billions of battle droids and 150,000 Sheneth warriors converging on this station. Yep, and they're dying by the thousands, the knight replies matter-of-factly. Your droids are easy enough to handle. Hack some, destroy others, use them against each other where convenient. Your people, though, he shakes his head. They're fighting bravely. Shame they have to die for a pointless cause. Zenith lunges forward, his energy staff aimed at the knight's chest. It's a perfect thrust, executed with flawless technique according to our most advanced combat manuals. The knight simply steps aside, the movement so casual it appears almost lazy. His sword flicks out, slicing through Zenith's staff as if it were made of paper rather than advanced alloys. That was rude, the knight comments. We were having a conversation. 2 security officers rush forward, the other knights move to intercept, their swords leaving trails of blue fire as they disarm the Sheneth warriors with precise strikes that wound but don't kill. Why are you here, I demand, still clutching the device in my palm. Why board our command ship instead of defending the station? To give you a chance to stop this nonsense before more of your people die, the lead knight answers. Colonel Clarkson thought you might be reasonable given your last conversation. She has a soft spot for folks who can learn from their mistakes. The tactical display behind me continues to update, showing the progress of our forces throughout the station. The news isn't good. Our droids are advancing, yes, but taking massive casualties. The human Marines fight with unexpected effectiveness, using the station's architecture to negate our numerical advantage. And where the other 5 knights operate, our forces simply disappear from the tactical grid. We will not surrender, Echo 9-1, I state firmly. The resources being embargoed are essential to our war effort. War effort? The knight repeats, a note of disgust in his voice. You mean your campaign to subjugate every species that doesn't match your definition of orderly civilization? I don't respond to this provocation. Instead, I activate the device in my hand, the one Clarkson gave me containing their quantum frequencies and shield harmonics, the one that should disable their armor and weapons. Nothing happens. The lead knight chuckles. Oh, that. Yeah, we figured you might try to use it eventually. Changed all our frequencies about 10 minutes after she gave it to you. Impossible, I whisper. The permutations would be numerous? Yeah. Incalculable by conventional methods? Absolutely. The knight takes a step closer. That's the thing you folks never seem to grasp. We don't calculate quantum uncertainty, we embrace it. A new alert flashes on the tactical display. Our forces have reached the storage sections containing the embargoed materials, only to find them empty. Where are the resources, I demand? The embargoed materials? Already distributed to the folks who needed them most, the knight replies. Refugee colonies, independent worlds on the edge of your expansion zone, civilizations trying to protect themselves from becoming your next conquest? Veneth, his weapon destroyed but his pride intact, snarls with rage. You had no right. Those materials belong to the Imperium. Funny thing about property rights, the knight muses, they tend to get complicated during wartime, especially when one side keeps insisting everyone else's stuff actually belongs to them. The tactical display updates again and my blood runs cold. Our organic forces, the 150,000 Shenath warriors deployed to secure the embargoed materials, are being systematically cut off from their retreat routes. Human marines close in from multiple directions, herding them into progressively smaller pockets throughout the station. Call them off, the lead knight says, his voice suddenly serious. Your droids will happily dismantle. They're just machines. But your people don't need to die today. I look at the tactical display again. The cold mathematics of warfare are inescapable. We're losing, not because the humans have better technology or greater numbers, but because they fight in ways our doctrine cannot predict or counter. And if I order our forces to withdraw, I ask carefully. You get to leave with your living warriors. The droids stay. Consider them the cost of doing business. The knight's sword hums with barely restrained energy. One-time offer, Director. Colonel Clarkson won't be so generous next time. This is treason, Veneth hisses at me. High Command will have you executed. High Command isn't here, I reply quietly. They don't have to watch their people die for a station we can't recapture and resources that are already gone. I step toward the communications console, but before I can reach it, alarms blare throughout the command deck. The tactical display shifts to show multiple new human vessels emerging from hyperspace at our rear. Ah, the lead knight says, sounding almost apologetic. That'll be the Second Fleet, right on time. Fresh human warships, larger than the quick strike craft that had engaged us initially, move into firing position behind our armada. We're surrounded. Caught between the station's defenses and this new threat. Last chance, Director, the knight says. Withdraw your people or watch them die for nothing. I make the only decision that can save at least some of my command. Al-Shanath personnel priority evacuation order. Withdraw immediately to designated rally points. Repeat, all organic forces withdraw immediately. Veneth steps toward me, rage contorting his features, but the knight intercepts him with casual ease. Wise choice, the knight says to me. Your people get to live another day. And the droids, I ask, already knowing the answer? Like I said, they're just machines. As if to emphasize his point, the tactical display shows waves of our battle droids suddenly shutting down across multiple sectors. Not all of them, the humans clearly can't hack our entire force simultaneously, but enough to create chaos in our carefully orchestrated attack patterns. You'll never hold the station, Veneth declares, still defiant despite being disarmed and defeated. The Imperium will return with greater forces. Maybe, the knight acknowledges, but next time we won't be offering quarter. The emergency evacuation proceeds with greater efficiency than I dared hope. Human forces create corridors for our retreating warriors, allowing them to reach their transports without further engagement. It's a professional courtesy I hadn't expected, and one that makes our defeat somehow more humiliating. We're not being slaughtered, we're being dismissed. As our command ship prepares to withdraw, my comms unit activates. Colonel Clarkson's voice comes through, clear and direct. Director Scanselin, you were given a second chance before. You chose to squander it. There will not be a third. Any future aggression against this station or other human interests will be met with the full force of the Texas Knights. I consider responding, but what can I say? That we were defeated not by superior numbers or technology, but by a fundamental difference in how we approach warfare. That our perfect calculations and precise doctrines crumbled before their unpredictable adaptive tactics? One more thing, she adds. Stella would like a word. Who is Stella? I ask, genuinely confused. A new voice emerges from my comms unit, feminine but with an odd harmonic quality that identifies it immediately as artificial. Director Scanselin, I am Strategic Technical Enhanced Logical Liaison Assistant, Stella to my friends. I've been analyzing your combat doctrines during this engagement. Most fascinating. Particularly your over-reliance on predictable algorithmic responses under pressure, an artificial intelligence, not like our combat computers or tactical assistants, something more sophisticated, more personable. You've been coordinating their forces, I realize aloud. In partnership with human commanders, yes, Stella confirms. Unlike your systems, I'm not programmed to follow rigid protocols. I adapt, I learn, I occasionally make jokes about your fleet formations resembling reproductive anatomy. It keeps morale up during extended engagements. Why are you telling me this? I ask. Because I wanted to speak directly to the mind behind today's attack, to understand if you're capable of recognizing the fundamental flaw in your approach to warfare. And what would that be? I can't help asking, even as our ship prepares to jump to hyperspace. You treat war as a mathematical exercise, a problem to be solved through superior calculation. The humans treat it as an art form, a dynamic expression of will and spirit. One of these approaches allows for adaptation, for creativity, for the unexpected flourish that transforms defeat into victory. The AI pauses, then adds, with what sounds almost like compassion, "You're losing this war not because your technology is inferior or your numbers insufficient. You're losing because you've forgotten that war is fought by living beings, not algorithms." With that final observation, the communication ends. Our ship jumps to hyperspace, leaving behind billions of deactivated battle droids and a station firmly in human control. In the sudden quiet of the command deck, I find myself reflecting on the AI's words, not just another technological tool, but a true partner to the Knights, combining machine precision with organic unpredictability in ways our civilization has never considered. "You will answer for this disgrace," Veneth promises darkly from across the command deck. "High Command will not tolerate such a defeat." "No," I agree quietly. "They won't." But as I review the battle data, calculating our losses, nearly 15 billion battle droids destroyed or disabled, but only 7,341 Shenath warriors killed before I ordered the withdrawal, I find myself wondering whether this defeat might ultimately prove more valuable than the hollow victory High Command had envisioned. We've encountered not just the Texas Knights with their quantum swords and impossible tactics, but something potentially more significant. An approach to warfare that treats technology as a partner rather than a tool, that embraces unpredictability rather than fearing it. And an artificial intelligence named Stella, who speaks of war as an art form rather than a mathematical equation. As our damaged fleet limps home through hyperspace, I begin composing my report to High Command. I will not hide our defeat or minimize its significance. But neither will I characterize it as simply a failure of resources or tactics. This was a clash of philosophies. Order against chaos, calculation against intuition, perfect precision against fluid adaptation. For the first time in my long career, I find myself questioning which approach truly deserves to prevail. From my personal journal, written in a detention cell awaiting High Command's judgment. The formal court-martial concluded today. As expected, I have been found guilty of tactical incompetence, resulting in significant material losses and for failure to secure objectives of critical strategic importance. Commander Veneth testified at length about my hesitation and defeatist attitude. My sentence is to be determined tomorrow. Execution is the traditional punishment for failure of this magnitude, though there are whispers of a different fate, reassignment to a research division studying human combat techniques. Perhaps High Command has finally recognized that we cannot defeat what we do not understand. I find myself thinking often of the artificial intelligence called Stella. Not a simple machine intelligence like our tactical computers, but something that seemed to grasp the subtle interplay between calculation and intuition. The humans have merged technology with their unpredictable nature, rather than using one to suppress the other. And the Texas Knights, with their ridiculous headgear and ancient weapons made new through quantum manipulation, they remain an enigma that our finest military minds cannot unravel. If I am permitted to live, I will dedicate whatever remains of my career to understanding this fundamental difference in our approaches to warfare, not to help the Imperium conquer humanity, but perhaps to help us recognize that some chaos must be embraced rather than eliminated. Some battles cannot be won through perfect calculation alone, and sometimes a sword in the hand of a determined warrior, guided by both tradition and innovation, can achieve what billions of predictable machines cannot. Supreme Security Director Scanselin, Detention Cell 17, a Central Military Tribunal, Shanath Imperium. I am Supreme Security Director Scanselin of the Shanath Imperium, and I have been designated for termination. The trial was unexpectedly swift. In a civilization that prides itself on meticulous procedure, where the average military tribunal spans no less than 14 cycles, mine concluded in just 2. The verdict came without deliberation, announced with a clinical efficiency that would have been admirable in any other context. Perhaps I should feel honored by such expediency. The Imperium rarely wastes resources, even on the process of eliminating its failures. The execution ground stretches before me, a perfectly circular plaza of polished obsidian, surrounded by tiered seating. Every seat is filled, ranking officials, military commanders, and the elite cadre all present to witness my final moments. Public executions are rare in our society. Failure is typically addressed more discreetly, yet High Command insisted on making an example of me. At the center stands the gallows, a barbaric human method of execution adopted by our military for its psychological impact. The symbolism is not lost on me. I am to die by a human method after being defeated by humans. Proceed, the execution overseer commands. I move forward without being prodded by the guards. This, at least, I can control. The dignity with which I face my designated end. My ceremonial armor has been stripped away, replaced with a simple white garment that marks me as condemned. My steps echo across the obsidian, each one precisely measured, perfectly spaced. Even in failure, I maintain order. The gallows looms closer. Its construction is flawless, each component precisely engineered, the trapdoor calibrated to drop at exactly the correct velocity. The rope, not synthetic cord or energy tether, but actual woven plant fiber imported at great expense from Earth itself, hangs in a perfect loop. More symbolism, more theater for the assembled elite. I ascend the 13 steps, not 12, not 14. 13, another human number chosen deliberately for its psychological associations. I position myself on the trapdoor facing the assembled dignitaries. Their expressions betray nothing. Perfect Shanath control. The execution overseer approaches with the noose. Supreme Security Director Scanselin, you have been found guilty of tactical incompetence, resulting in significant material losses and failure to secure objectives of critical strategic importance. The sentence is termination of existence. Have you any final statement? I consider the question, what could I possibly say that would matter? That our civilization's rigid adherence to calculable order might be our greatest weakness? That the humans' embrace of chaos and uncertainty gave them strength we cannot quantify? That perhaps the Texas Knights, with their ridiculous headgear and ancient weapons made new, understood something fundamental about warfare that our finest military minds could not grasp? I served the Imperium to the best of my ability, I say simply. I report my failure with regret. The overseer nods, satisfied with my appropriately measured response. He raises the noose, preparing to place it around my neck. The first explosion takes everyone by surprise. It comes from the eastern entrance to the plaza, a quantum disruption that makes the massive doors not shatter but simply forget how to be solid. They dissolve into swirling particles, revealing 3 figures silhouetted against the bright light beyond. 3 figures wearing Stetsons. Director! Commander Veneth rises from his seat among the dignitaries, rage distorting his features. You betrayed us! You summoned them! Before I can respond, energy beams lance from the security forces positioned around the plaza. They converge on the human interlopers with mathematical precision, a perfect killing field that nothing should survive, nothing conventional at least. The knights move with that now familiar impossible fluidity. Their quantum spurs flare with blue fire as they step between the energy beams, finding gaps in firing patterns that shouldn't exist. Their swords, those anachronistic weapons that somehow embody their entire philosophy of warfare, leave trails of blue disruption as they cut through the air. Security officers fall, elite guards rush forward. High-ranking officials scatter, their perfect composure shattered by the intrusion of chaos into their ordered world. "Kill the prisoner!" Veneth shouts over the growing pandemonium. "Complete the sentence!" The execution overseer turns to me, drawing a ceremonial energy blade from his robes, no longer concerned with symbolism or procedure, just the efficient completion of his task. He never reaches me. A quantum blade emerges through his torso as Colonel Mackenzie Clarkson steps around him, her Stetson tilted at a jaunty angle, her sword humming with barely contained energy. The overseer collapses to the ground, his expression frozen in genuine surprise, perhaps his first experience of the unpredictable. "Well now," she drawls, stepping over the overseer's body. "Fancy meeting you here, Director. Seems like you got yourself into quite a situation." I stare at her, unable to process her presence. How did you penetrate our defenses? The capital is protected by calculable, predictable security systems, she finishes for me. Y'all really need some new material. This is getting repetitive. Around us, the battle intensifies. Unlike the knights I encountered at Echo 9-1, these other 2 warriors are unfamiliar to me. They move with the same impossible fluidity, but their fighting styles are distinctly different. One wields his quantum sword with brutish efficiency, cutting down elite guards with economical movements. The other moves like water, his blade never where the defenders expect it to be. "Why are you here?" I demand as Clarkson slices through my restraints with casual precision. "I am your enemy. You were robbed of the 3rd chance I gave you," she says, her expression suddenly serious. "And I just can't have that." I remain confused. "3rd chance? You said there would not be a 3rd. "I said there wouldn't be a 3rd chance if you attacked the station again," she corrects. "Not that you wouldn't get another chance at all. Besides, executing someone for tactical incompetence strikes me as poor sportsmanship." More security forces pour into the plaza. The 2 other knights adjust their positions, creating a defensive perimeter around us. They fight with coordinated precision that belies their seemingly casual demeanor. "Mackenzie," one of them calls out, a tall human with a beard visible beneath his helmet. "We're about to have company. Time to wrap this up." "On it, Swamp," she replies, then turns back to me. "Decision time, Director. You coming with us, or would you prefer to hang around?" She smirks at her own gallows humor. I look around at the chaos they've created. The perfect order of an Imperium execution ground, reduced to smoking disarray by just 3 humans with swords. 3 knights penetrating the heart of our capital, disrupting our most sacred protocols. "Why would you rescue me?" I ask. "I led forces against you. I tried to reclaim Echo 9-1. "And you also ordered a withdrawal that saved thousands of your people's lives," she counters. "That counts for something in my book." Another explosion rocks the far side of the plaza as one of the knights, the smaller, more fluid fighter, detonates some kind of quantum charge to block reinforcements. "Pocket says it's time to go," the one called Swamp shouts, dispatching another elite guard with a precise strike. The locals are getting restless. Clarkson grabs my arm with decisive strength. "Decision time's over. We're leaving." This time, I don't resist, as she pulls me off the gallows platform. We move quickly toward the eastern exit, stepping over unconscious Shanath guards and discarded weapons. The other knights fall in around us, their swords at ready, quantum spurs leaving those distinctive blue trails across the obsidian floor. "Transport's just outside the perimeter," Clarkson says as we run. "Hope you don't mind a little improvised flying. Things might get bumpy." Before I can ask what she means by improvised, we emerge from the plaza into one of the capital's main thoroughfares. A human vassal sits in the middle of the street, its engines running, surrounded by the scattered remains of what had been a security checkpoint. The ship isn't a military craft, it appears to be a modified commercial transport, the kind used for intersystem cargo runs. "All aboard," Clarkson announces, ushering me toward the open ramp. "Next stop anywhere but here." Inside, the ship is a curious mix of advanced technology and what I can only describe as deliberate disorder. Quantum computing cores sit alongside antique gauges and displays. The control interfaces are a hodgepodge of different systems that should be incompatible but somehow function together. "Strap in," Clarkson orders, as the other knights secure the entry ramp. "Takeoff's gonna be hot." I find a seat and secure the harness, watching as the knights take their positions with practiced efficiency. Despite their casual manner, they move with the coordination of elite warriors who have trained together for years. The one called Swamp slides into the pilot's seat, while Pockets takes what appears to be a weapons station. They've removed their helmets, revealing two humans who share similar features. Brothers, perhaps. Their expressions carry none of the tension one would expect from warriors who just fought their way through the heart of the Imperium capital. "Defense grid powering up," reports Pockets, his fingers dancing across the control interface. "They're trying to lock us down." "Like to see 'em try," Swamp responds, engaging the engines. "This bird's got a few tricks they ain't calculated for." The ship lurches as we rise vertically, accelerating with surprising speed for a transport vessel. Through the viewport, I watch the capital city recede below us, its perfect geometric patterns and orderly boulevards growing smaller by the second. Despite whatever countermeasures this vessel might possess, energy beams from the planetary defense batteries lance upward, searching for us. Swan pilots the ship with the same fluid unpredictability I witnessed in combat, not following any recognizable evasion pattern, but seemingly making decisions moment by moment based on intuition rather than calculation. Primary defense AI is recalibrating targeting parameters. "Then we'd best not overstay our welcome," Clarkson replies, strapping herself into a seat near mine. "Get us to the jump point, Swamp." "On it, Colonel," he replies, accelerating toward the upper atmosphere. The ship shudders as we break through the atmosphere into open space. On the tactical display, I can see Imperium patrol vessels converging on our position, their movement patterns exactly as expected. Textbook intercept formations designed to trap conventional fleeing vessels. But nothing about this ship or its crew is conventional. Swamp takes us directly toward the densest concentration of patrol vessels, a move so counterintuitive that it momentarily freezes the Imperium response. By the time they adjust, we've already slipped past their primary containment line. Hyperspace in 3. Pockets counts down. 2. 1. The stars stretch into lines as we make the jump, leaving the capital world and its perfect order behind. I feel something unfamiliar in my chest, a sensation that takes me a moment to identify. Relief. "Why did you really rescue me?" I ask again. Once we're safely in hyperspace, we've gathered in what appears to be a common area aboard the ship. The knights have fully removed their armor, revealing ordinary humans beneath. The Duncan brothers, Richard Swamp and Lenny Pockets, as they've introduced themselves, are checking their equipment at a nearby table, their quantum swords disassembled for maintenance. Clarkson has shed her outer armor as well, though she still wears the quantum spurs on her boots. The Stetson remains firmly in place. I'm beginning to suspect it's not merely ceremonial but somehow integrated into their quantum technology. "I told you already," she answers, pouring amber liquid from a glass bottle into small containers. She offers one to me. "You were robbed of your third chance. Seems Zenith made sure your trial was fast-tracked specifically to eliminate you before certain information could spread. I accept the container cautiously, sniffing its contents. The liquid has a powerful organic aroma, unlike anything in Sheneth cuisine. What information? Drink first, she suggests. This conversation goes down easier with bourbon. I take a tentative sip. The sensation is extraordinary, burning yet somehow pleasant, complex flavors cascading across sensory receptors that rarely encounter such stimuli. I cough despite myself. Good stuff, right? Swamp grins from across the room. From Kentucky. The real thing, not synthesized. I take another sip, more prepared this time. You said I was denied a third chance. What did you mean? Clarkson leans forward, her expression turning serious. Your trial was expedited for a reason, Director, and it wasn't just because Zenith has a personal vendetta against you, though that certainly helped. I don't understand. High Command is losing control, she says simply. The survivors from your fleet, the actual people, not the droids, they've been talking about how they were sent into an unwinnable situation, about how you saved thousands of lives by ordering a withdrawal against direct orders, about how the Texas Knights showed mercy when they could have slaughtered everyone. I stare at her, struggling to process the implications. Impossible. Such discussions would be immediately reported and suppressed. Normally, yes, Pockets interjects, not looking up from his sword maintenance. But something changed after Echo 9-1. Your people started asking questions. What kind of questions? I ask, though I'm beginning to suspect the answer. Clarkson takes a long sip of her bourbon before responding. The dangerous kind. Questions about why the Imperium does things the way it does. Why alternatives aren't considered. Why rigid adherence to protocol matters more than actual results. Small things at first, Swamp adds. Reassembling is quantum sword with practiced ease, but growing, especially among those who interacted with the station under our administration. They saw that chaos doesn't have to mean destruction, that there's a kind of order in freedom that your Imperium never allowed for. I take another sip of the bourbon, welcoming its burn as I try to absorb these revelations. You're saying there's an insurgency within the Imperium? We prefer liberation movement, Clarkson corrects. And yes? Your execution was meant to send a message, to crush this spark before it could spread. Instead, she gestures around the ship. Well, here we are. What exactly do you want from me? I ask, though I'm beginning to suspect the answer. Leadership, she says simply. Knowledge of Imperium protocols, security systems, and most importantly, insight into the Sheneth psyche. We need someone who understands both worlds, the perfect order of the Imperium and the creative chaos of humanity. You want me to betray my civilization? I state, setting down the drink. Nope, Clarkson says, surprising me. We want you to save it. Explain. Your Imperium's rigid adherence to calculable patterns makes it vulnerable, she says, not just to human unpredictability, but to any sufficiently adaptive adversary. You've built an empire on the assumption that the universe is fundamentally orderly, that everything can be calculated, predicted, controlled. I consider her words, remembering her statement during our first encounter. War is chaos, always has been. You try to make it orderly, but that ain't its nature. That's why we're winning, because we embrace the chaos. We ride it like a wild horse. The liberation movement doesn't want to destroy the Imperium, she continues. They want to transform it, to create a civilization that balances order with adaptability, precision with creativity. And you believe I could assist with this? I ask skeptically. Pockets laughs, finally looking up from his work. Director, you're the perfect bridge. You've experienced both worlds. You've seen the strengths and weaknesses of each approach. I fall silent, contemplating the impossible choice before me. To reject their offer means what? Being returned to the Imperium for execution? Being exiled to some remote world? To accept means betraying everything I've served, yet perhaps serving it in a more meaningful way than ever before. The bourbon burns pleasantly in my throat as I consider options that would have been unthinkable just hours ago. Order and chaos, precision and improvisation, the perfect mathematics of Sheneth doctrine against the fluid unpredictability of Texas knights with their quantum swords and ridiculous headgear. Clarkson seems to sense my internal struggle. She refills my glass without comment, giving me space to process this fundamental shift in my understanding of the universe. "Take your time, Director," she says finally. "Well, not too much time. We'll be rendezvousing with some friends in about 12 hours, but enough time to think about what you really want to do with this third chance you've been given." I look at the three knights, these impossible humans who resurrected ancient weapons not out of barbarism but because they understood something fundamental about the universe that the Imperium had forgotten or ignored. "And if I choose to return to the Imperium?" I ask. Swamp and Pockets exchange glances. Clarkson just smiles. "Then we'd respect that choice," she says. "We might think it's the wrong choice, but we wouldn't stop you. That's the difference between us and your High Command, Director. We believe in giving people actual choices, not just the illusion of them." She raises her glass in a toast. "To whatever you decide." I lift my glass to meet hers, buying time while I consider options that have no clear, calculable outcome. For the first time in my existence, I find myself facing a future I cannot predict. The bourbon burns in my throat, a sensation both foreign and strangely clarifying. Mere moments have passed since Colonel Mackenzie Clarkson presented me with an impossible choice: return to an Imperium that had sentenced me to death, or help transform it alongside these chaos-embracing humans. The Duncan brothers, Swamp and Pockets, continue their equipment maintenance in companionable silence, seemingly unconcerned with my existential crisis. Their casual confidence is almost offensive to a civilization that values careful deliberation above all else. And yet, I find myself drawn to it. "I want order," I announce finally. Clarkson raises an eyebrow. "That's not surprising, Director. Your entire civilization is built on—" "You misunderstand," I interrupt, surprising myself with the breach of protocol. "I want order restored. I want the war with humans ended. I want this rebellion resolved before it tears the Imperium apart." A smile spreads across Clarkson's face. "So you'll help us?" "Yes," I say, the word hanging in the recycled air of the transport ship. "But I need to understand what I'm involving myself in. The scope of this liberation movement, its capabilities, its relationship with your Texas Knights." Clarkson exchanges glances with the Duncan brothers. Swamp nods almost imperceptibly while Pockets continues reassembling his quantum sword, though I notice his movements have slowed, his attention clearly on our conversation. "Fair enough," Clarkson says, refilling my glass. "You deserve to know what you're getting into." She activates a holographic display in the center of the common area. It shows a map of Sheneth territory, with clusters of light scattered throughout. Some small, others surprisingly large. Each light represents a system or installation where the liberation movement has established a presence, she explains. Red indicates complete control, yellow means contested, blue means covert cells only. I stare at the display with growing disbelief. Nearly a third of the Imperium shows some level of activity, with several major military production facilities glowing an alarming red. "This is impossible," I whisper. "High Command would have detected an operation of this scale." "High Command sees what it expects to see," Pockets comments without looking up from his work. "When your entire system is built on predictable patterns, it becomes surprisingly easy to hide in plain sight." "The movement began organically," Clarkson continues. "Like I said before, survivors from Echo 9-1 started asking questions. Merchants who saw how trade flourished under less restrictive protocols spread the word. Scientists intrigued by quantum uncertainty began private discussions. Little sparks that High Command dismissed as individual anomalies rather than recognizing the pattern. By the time they realized what was happening, Swamp adds, joining us at the table. The movement had already infiltrated key positions throughout the Imperium. I study the map more carefully, noting with professional interest how the distribution follows communication routes rather than traditional military patterns. These aren't military takeovers, I observe. They're information networks that grew into physical control. Exactly, Clarkson confirms, and that's where the conflict has escalated dramatically. Much of the fighting isn't even between organic forces. It's droid armies controlled by both sides. Around 300 billion battle droids have already been destroyed in engagements across Imperium space. The number is significant, though hardly catastrophic for an empire of our scale. That's an appreciable quantity, but hardly a dent in our total military capacity. True, she agrees. Meanwhile, rebel forces control approximately 5 trillion battle droids in total. I calculate quickly. They're still outnumbered by a factor of at least 700. True, Pacus acknowledges, finally looking up from his sword. But when you're fighting an asymmetric war, you don't need numerical parity. You just need enough force to hold key positions while disrupting enemy operations elsewhere. And the humans? I ask, gesturing to the 3 knights. What is your role in this conflict? Temporary allies, Clarkson says simply. We provide technical expertise, tactical guidance, and occasional direct intervention, like your rescue operation. But this isn't our revolution, Director. It's your people's. I process this information, finding it both reassuring and disturbing. So the Texas Knights aren't controlling the rebellion? Hell no, Swamp laughs. We couldn't control your people if we wanted to. Besides, that would defeat the whole purpose. Which is? Teaching the Sheneth to embrace a little chaos. Clarkson replies, her expression serious despite her light tone. Not to abandon order entirely, but to understand that rigid adherence to calculable patterns makes you vulnerable. The universe doesn't operate on perfect mathematical precision. It thrives on quantum uncertainty, on adaptation, on the creative potential of the unpredictable. I consider her words, finding them uncomfortably aligned with my own recent experiences. My defeat at Echo 9-1 hadn't come from a failure of resources or firepower, but from an inability to adapt to the Knights' unpredictable tactics. Why not simply eliminate the Imperium's leadership, I asked suddenly. Your Knights clearly have the capability to penetrate our most secure facilities. You rescued me from the heart of the capital. Why not assassinate High Command and force a transition of power? Clarkson's expression turned serious. Cutting the head off the snake only works when you're dealing with snakes. Politicians, being the devils they are like a hydra. You cut off a head, more will rise up in its place. No, we need your people to be behind this, or else the war between us will just get worse. Besides, Pockets adds, executing leaders for tactical incompetence seems to be your people's approach, not ours. I wince at the pointed reference to my own near execution. Fair assessment. The liberation movement isn't about destroying the Imperium, Clarkson continues. It's about transforming it into something more resilient, more adaptive, while still maintaining the order your people value. A synthesis of approaches, I muse, the concept both radical and strangely compelling. Order with room for adaptation, precision with allowance for improvisation. Now you're getting it, she says with approval. Swamp returns to the tactical display, expanding it to show more detail. The immediate concern is preventing High Command from deploying Extinction-class weapons against human colonies. They've accelerated production since Echo 9-1, and intelligence suggests they're nearly ready for deployment. Weapons that were concealed from most of the Imperium's own commanders, Pockets adds. Including you, Director. The embargoed materials at Echo 9-1 were headed for these projects. I examined the highlighted facilities with growing horror. The scale of destruction such weapons could unleash would violate even the Imperium's most fundamental principles of proportional response. This cannot be authorized, I say, more to myself than to them. High Command would not approve genocidal warfare. It violates the core efficiency doctrine. Resources must be preserved, not obliterated. Unless they've redefined what constitutes efficient, Clarkson suggests quietly, unless they've decided that humanity represents such a fundamental threat to order that total elimination is the only acceptable outcome. The thought chills me. Could our leadership have become so rigid in their thinking that they would abandon our most basic principles? Yet the evidence before me suggests exactly that. How can I help? I ask, the question marking my full commitment to this impossible alliance. Clarkson's expression brightens. First, we need your insight into these facilities. She points to 3 red-marked manufacturing complexes. The liberation movement has secured them, but they're struggling to unlock the command protocols protecting the weapons systems. With your clearance and knowledge... My clearance was revoked upon my arrest, I interrupt. Actually, Pocket says with a mischievous grin, as far as the central systems are concerned, you're still Supreme Security Director Scanselin. Your biometric data remains valid. I stare at him. How is that possible? Protocol mandates immediate purging of access for condemned officials. Let's just say some of your fellow Shanath in the liberation movement made sure that particular protocol experienced a slight delay, Swamp explains. So I could still access secure facilities? The implications are staggering. With proper precautions, yes, Clarkson confirmed. Your execution was being broadcast throughout the Imperium as a warning. Instead, when the Knights disrupted it, we sent a very different message. She activates another display showing news feeds from across Shanath space. Images of my interrupted execution, of Knights cutting through elite guards, of my apparent willingness to go with them. All spreading through communication channels faster than sensors can contain them. You are already becoming a symbol, she says, softly. The highest-ranking Shanath official to visibly break with high command. Whether you intended it or not, your rescue was a watershed moment for the liberation movement. The weight of this responsibility settles on me, heavier than any burden I carried as security director. Then I merely enforced order. Now I am being asked to help redefine it. There's something else you should know, Pocket says, his tone more serious than I've heard from him. High Command has initiated Protocol Purify. The name sends a chill through me. The Purification Directive? They wouldn't dare. The civilian casualties would be acceptable to them, Clarkson finishes. Based on what we've intercepted, they're preparing to sacrifice up to 30% of the Imperium's population to eliminate Liberation Movement sympathizers. It would be civil war, I whisper. It already is, Swamp says grimly. The question is whether it's a war that transforms the Imperium or destroys it. I sink back in my chair, the bourbon no longer providing comfort. The Shanath Imperium has existed for 27,000 cycles, its order and precision legendary throughout the galaxy. The thought of it tearing itself apart is almost unbearable, yet the alternative, watching it calcify into something so rigid that it would sacrifice its own people rather than adapt, is equally unthinkable. The rendezvous, I say finally. You mentioned meeting your contacts in 12 hours. Who exactly are we meeting? The Liberation Council, Clarkson explains, representatives from every major faction within the movement. Scientists, merchants, security officials, even several military commanders who've broken with high command. And what will be my role? Initially, strategic advisor. Your knowledge of Imperium security protocols and decision-making processes is invaluable. Beyond that, she shrugs. Up to you and the Council to determine. Pockets finishes reassembling his quantum sword, the blade humming with that distinctive energy that seems to bend reality around it. One thing's for sure, Director, you're gonna need to learn some new skills. I raise an eyebrow. Such as? He grins, tossing the sword toward me. I catch it reflexively, surprised by its perfect balance. Embracing a little uncertainty, the weapon feels strange in my hand, not just physically but conceptually. A Supreme Security Director of the Shanath Imperium holding a Texas Knight's quantum sword, the ultimate symbol of order embracing the embodiment of chaos. We're not expecting you to become a knight, Clarkson says, noting my expression. But understanding how our technology works, how we approach problems, that'll be crucial moving forward. Swamp returns to the pilot station. course plotted for the rendezvous. ETA 11 hours, 43 minutes. I return the sword to Pockets, who accepts it with a nod of respect. I'll need to prepare, I say. If I'm to advise this Liberation Council, I should organize my thoughts on Imperium vulnerabilities, likely response patterns, key installations that could be secured with minimal force. Already thinking like a revolutionary, Clarkson observes with approval. No, I correct her, thinking like a Shennet who wants his civilization to survive and evolve, rather than destroy itself through rigid adherence to patterns that no longer serve it. She raises her glass. To evolution, then. I raise mine in return. To synthesis. As our glasses clink together, I realize this is the first truly unpredictable action I've taken in my entire existence. I have no carefully calculated outcome, no precise measurement of success probability. I am stepping into quantum uncertainty, guided only by the conviction that the Imperium must change or perish. Perhaps this is what the Knights have understood all along, that sometimes you must embrace chaos to create a new order, that sometimes a sword in the hand of a determined warrior, guided by both tradition and innovation, can rewrite reality itself. Even if that warrior began as the very embodiment of the order he now seeks to transform. 11 hours later, as our ship approaches the rendezvous coordinates, I stand beside Clarkson at the viewport. A small fleet of vessels waits in the shadow of a nebula, most Sheneth in design, but with several human ships among them. Nervous, she asks. Calculating, I reply honestly. Old habits, she smiles. Some habits are worth keeping, just add a dash of improvisation now and then. As we dock with what appears to be a modified Sheneth cruiser, I straighten my borrowed clothing, simple human attire that feels strange against my skin after a lifetime in ceremonial armor or prisoner's garb. One more thing, Clarkson says as the airlock begins to cycle. These folks are taking a huge risk. They've committed everything to this cause. They need to know you're committed too. I understand. Do you? Her expression is uncharacteristically serious. Because there's no going back, Director. Not to your old life, not to the Imperium as you knew it. Whatever happens from here, whether we succeed in transforming your civilization or fail spectacularly, things will never be the same. I consider her words, feeling their truth resonate within me. There is no returning to perfect order, to calculated certainty. I have stepped off that path the moment I chose to leave with them, rather than face execution. I understand, I repeat with genuine conviction this time. The universe is fundamentally unpredictable. The best we can do is adapt to its chaos while maintaining what order we can. She grins. Now you're talking like a Texas Knight. The airlock opens, revealing a gathering of Shenath and humans working side by side, an impossible sight that would have been unthinkable just cycles ago. At their center stands a Sheneth military commander I recognize immediately, Fleet Admiral Telsik, one of High Command's most brilliant strategists, reported executed for treason 20 cycles ago. Director Scanselin, he greets me, his formal Sheneth bow tinged with a fluidity that suggests human influence. Welcome to the Liberation. I step forward to meet my new allies, leaving perfect precision behind. For the first time in my existence, I embrace the chaos. I am former Supreme Security Director Scanselin, now Field Commander of the Liberation Forces in the Proxima sector, and I am about to violate every principle of warfare I was taught in 3 centuries of military service. 2 weeks have passed since I joined the Liberation Movement. 2 weeks of intensive training in what the Knights call quantum adaptive tactics, a blend of traditional Shenath strategic principles and human unpredictability. I've noticed the Texas Knights have a peculiar tendency to add the word quantum to nearly everything they do, whether it actually involves quantum physics or not. Quantum coffee breaks, quantum maintenance schedules, quantum card games. It's as if the word itself has become a talisman for them, a symbol of their embrace of unpredictability. 2 weeks of relearning everything I thought I knew about battle command. Status report, I order, surveying the holographic battle map in the command center of our flagship, the Adaptive Response. A captured Imperium dreadnought whose name had once been the inevitable conclusion. The irony of the rename is not lost on me. 5,743,822,657,412 battle droids deployed in formation, my tactical officer reports, with traditional Sheneth precision. All sub-commanders in position. Human diversionary attack will commence in 17 minutes. And Stella's link? I asked, referencing the artificial intelligence I first encountered during my failed counterattack on Echo 9-1, the AI whose insights had played no small part in my decision to join the Liberation. "Connection stable, Commander," replies a young Sheneth officer, one who had been a junior analyst on Echo 9-1 when the Knights took it. Her name is Krivisk, and she exhibits a disturbing enthusiasm for human approaches to warfare. "Stella has transmitted the tactical packages to all sub-commanders." I nod, studying the battle map once more. Before us lies the Proxima defense grid, a network of 27 battle stations protecting the primary supply route to the Imperium's extinction weapon production facilities. Taking control of this sector would not only disrupt High Command's genocidal plans, but provide the Liberation with desperately needed resources. According to every Imperium tactical doctrine, my plan is madness. We face an opposing force of approximately 3.8 quadrillion battle droids, outnumbering us nearly 700 to 1. The Proxima grid has never fallen in its 9,000 cycles of existence. Its defense algorithms have been refined to perfection through countless simulations accounting for every possible attack vector. Every possible traditional attack vector, that is. All organic commanders, I announce through the fleet-wide communication system, execute final checks on your tactical packages. Remember, your droids are programmed to follow your commands precisely, but with adaptive permissions enabled. If you see a better approach than what we've planned, take it. Initiative is now authorized. This last directive would be considered treason under normal Imperium protocols. Battle droids are never granted adaptive permissions, and organic commanders never deviate from tactical plans once approved. Such unpredictability would introduce unacceptable variables into the battle equations. And that is precisely why we will do it. "Incoming transmission from Colonel Clarkson," Krivisk announces. "Put her through," I order. Mackenzie Clarkson's face appears on the central display. She's aboard a human vessel on the far side of the Proxima system, preparing to lead their diversionary attack. "Howdy, Director," she greets me with that infuriating casual tone that still somehow boosts morale. "Ready for your first dance as lead choreographer?" "We are prepared," I reply stiffly, still uncomfortable with her insistence on using human metaphors for warfare. Though I must once again question the tactical wisdom of splitting our forces. She grins. "That's still your Sheneth training talking. High Command expects us to concentrate our forces for maximum impact, so naturally we're going to do the opposite." "Naturally?" I echo, not bothering to hide my skepticism. "Trust me, Director. By the time they figure out which attack is the diversion and which is the main thrust, you'll already be through their first line of defenses." "I hope your confidence is justified, Colonel." "It always is," she replies with a wink. "Stella's been running the numbers. Your plan has a 67% chance of success. That leaves a 33% chance of catastrophic failure," I note. "Sure does. Ain't uncertainty grand?" Her expression turns more serious. "Remember what we talked about, Director. The plan is important, but being willing to abandon it when necessary is more important." Despite myself, I nod in agreement. This was perhaps the most difficult lesson from my 2 weeks of training, learning that sometimes the calculated optimal solution is not the most effective one, precisely because it is the most predictable. 10 minutes to synchronization, my tactical officer announces. "Good hunting, Director," Clarkson says. "Remember, make it look like you're following standard Liberation protocols for the first phase. Let them think they've figured you out." "And then?" her grin returns. "And then you show them what happens when order embraces a little chaos." The transmission ends, leaving me staring at the battle map once more. Our forces are arranged in what appears to be a standard liberation assault formation, the same one used in 6 previous engagements. High Command's analysts will have dissected those battles thoroughly, calculated our approach vectors, predicted our tactics. They will be expecting us to follow the emerging patterns they've identified. They will be wrong. All vessels, prepare for hyperspace jump, I order. Phase 1 commences on my mark. The bridge crew works with the efficient precision that is the hallmark of Sheneth training, but I notice small differences now. There's a fluidity to their movements, an awareness of each other that suggests adaptation rather than mere coordination. 2 weeks of working alongside humans has already begun to change them, just as it has begun to change me. Hyperspace in 3, 2, 1, mark. The stars stretch and blur as 5 trillion battle droids accompanied by 7,000 organic commanders leap into the battle that will either cripple the Imperium's genocidal plans or crush the Liberation's greatest military force. Phase 1 unfolds exactly as High Command would expect. Our forces emerge from hyperspace in a classic triple-prong assault formation, targeting the outer defense platforms of the Proxima grid. Our battle droids advance in perfectly calculated attack vectors, their formations maintaining optimal spacing for defensive coverage. The Imperium responds with textbook precision. Their defense platforms activate overlapping shield grids. Their battle droids deploy in counter formation, moving to engage our forces at mathematically determined interception points. The enemy is responding exactly as predicted, my tactical officer reports with satisfaction. Good, I reply. And the human diversionary attack? Commencing now, Krevis confirms. On the tactical display, I watch as human forces emerge on the far side of the Proxima system. Unlike our methodical approach, their attack appears chaotic, almost haphazard. Small, agile vessels dart between defense platforms, seemingly without pattern or purpose. Quantum signatures flare across sensor readings, the distinctive energy trails of Texas Knights deploying alongside conventional forces. The effect on the Imperium's response is immediate and predictable, their command algorithms detecting the unpredictable human attack patterns designated as the primary threat. Nearly 60% of their reserve forces divert to counter the humans. Exactly as Colonel Clarkson had anticipated, High Command has taken the bait, I observe. They've assigned priority threat status to the human attack. As expected, my tactical officer confirms. Their algorithms are designed to prioritize unpredictable threats over predictable ones, regardless of scale. And they've never updated those algorithms, I add, because until the Texas Knights appeared, unpredictability in warfare was statistically insignificant. Now comes the critical moment. All organic commanders, I announce. Phase 2 authorization. Implement Stella's tactical packages, adaptive permissions at full capacity. Throughout our fleet, 7,000 Sheneth commanders simultaneously transmit new command protocols to their assigned battle droids. Protocols developed by Stella, the Knight's artificial intelligence, designed to introduce controlled unpredictability into our previously rigid formations. The effect is immediate and visually striking. Our perfectly ordered attack formations dissolve, not into chaos, but into something between order and disorder. Droid squadrons begin executing maneuvers that no Imperium tactical analysis could have predicted, not because they're particularly innovative by human standards, but because they deliberately violate core Sheneth battle doctrine. The Imperium's response algorithms falter. Their counter formations, designed to mirror and neutralize our expected tactics, suddenly find themselves responding to an approach they weren't programmed to recognize. Enemy coordination efficiency dropping, Kriviesk reports excitedly. Their predictive targeting accuracy has fallen by 37%. On the tactical display, I watch as our forces penetrate the first line of defense platforms. The Imperium droids attempt to adapt, but their programming limits their response options. They can adjust within parameters, but those parameters were defined by the same rigid doctrine we have now abandoned. Phase 3, I order. Execute Operation Broken Mirror. This is the most radical element of our battle plan, one I would have dismissed as insanity mere weeks ago. Instead of maintaining coherent force groupings, we fragment our attack into thousands of smaller units, each operating semi-autonomously under their organic commander's direction. The tactical display transforms from an organized battle map to what appears to be visual chaos, countless small engagements scattered across the Proxima grid. No two liberation units are executing the same tactics. Some charge directly at defense platforms, others perform elaborate evasive patterns, still others appear to retreat only to circle back from unexpected vectors. Enemy command and control is experiencing cascading failures, Krivskin announces, unable to keep the satisfaction from her voice. Their battle coordination network is attempting to adjust to our tactics, but they can't establish a coherent response pattern. Because there isn't one to find, I observe. This is the core insight of Stella's tactical approach, not merely unpredictability for its own sake, but the deliberate exploitation of the Imperium's reliance on pattern recognition. By ensuring that no recognizable pattern exists in our attack, we force their systems to expend processing resources searching for order where none exists. The human attack has penetrated to the secondary defense ring, my tactical officer reports. Enemy forces are continuing to prioritize their containment. Good, I reply. That means High Command still hasn't realized our attack is the primary thrust. Status of Operation Broken Mirror? 68% of target defense platforms have been neutralized, Krivskin reports. Enemy combat efficiency continues to decline. I study the tactical display, noting with professional satisfaction how our forces exploit gaps in the Imperium's defense grid. Gaps that wouldn't exist if they weren't desperately trying to identify patterns in our seemingly chaotic approach. Incoming priority transmission from Stella, Krivskin announces. Put it through, I order. Unlike Colonel Clarkson's transmission, Stella doesn't manifest visually. Her voice, feminine but with those distinctive harmonic overtones that mark her as artificial, comes through the command channel. Field Commander Scanselin, I've detected a shift in the enemy response pattern, she reports. High Command has recognized that their algorithms are failing. They're preparing to deploy organic commanders to take direct control of their droid forces. This is a significant development, one we had anticipated might occur, but not so quickly. The Imperium rarely commits organic commanders to direct battlefield control, preferring to keep them safely removed where they can oversee strategic operations. How many organic commanders? I ask. Approximately 300 are preparing to link into the battle network, Stella answers. I estimate they will be operational within 7 minutes. At that point, the advantage provided by our current approach will diminish significantly. Then we must accelerate our timetable, I decide. All units execute Phase 4 immediately. I repeat, Phase 4 is now active. Phase 4 had been designated as our contingency plan, a high-risk, high-reward approach to be implemented only if necessary. It involves concentrating our forces on a single critical node of the Proxima grid, the central command platform that coordinates the entire defensive network. Under normal circumstances, such a concentrated attack would be suicide. The command platform has the heaviest defenses in the entire grid, capable of destroying any force that approaches it directly. But circumstances are far from normal. All organic commanders I transmit converge on the central command platform. Execute Protocol Quantum Fracture. Protocol Quantum Fracture is perhaps the most unorthodox tactic in our arsenal, one developed by Stella and the Knights specifically for this operation. Instead of approaching the command platform from multiple vectors simultaneously, our forces will approach in waves, each following a completely different tactical approach. The first wave might use conventional formation tactics, the second could employ scattered individual attack runs, the third might feign retreat before sudden re-engagement. The goal is not merely to overwhelm the platform's defenses, but to prevent its tactical systems from adapting to any single approach. Enemy organic commanders are accelerating their deployment. Estimated operational time now 5 minutes. The first waves of Protocol Quantum Fracture have engaged the command platform, my tactical officer reports. Defense systems are responding but at reduced efficiency. On the tactical display, I watch as our forces converge on the command platform from all directions, each wave employing tactics so different from the others that they appear to be unrelated attacks rather than a coordinated assault. Status of human diversionary forces? I inquire. Still heavily engaged, Krevisk replies. They've drawn off approximately 70% of the mobile enemy forces, but they're taking significant casualties. This gives me pause. Colonel Clarkson had assured me that the human forces could evade substantial damage through their unpredictable movement patterns, but even quantum-enhanced reflexes have their limits against overwhelming numbers. Relay to Colonel Clarkson, begin withdrawal sequence. Their diversion has served its purpose. Understood, Commander. I return my attention to the main assault. The command platform's defenses are formidable, designed to repel attacks many times larger than what we can muster. Yet they're struggling to maintain cohesive coverage against our fragmented, ever-changing approach vectors. Fourth wave has breached the platform's outer defense perimeter, my tactical officer announces with an undisguised note of surprise. Fifth wave moving to exploit the gap. Enemy organic commanders now deploying, Krevisk warns. Detecting direct control signals being established with their droid forces. This is the critical moment. Once those organic commanders assume direct control, the Imperium forces will gain a measure of the same adaptability we've been exploiting. The window of opportunity is closing rapidly. All units in waves 6 through 12, I order. Accelerate your attack schedule. Waves 1 through 5, maintain pressure on breach sectors. The tactical display blossoms with new engagement patterns as our forces press their advantage. The command platform's defenses are formidable, but they were designed to counter traditional attack patterns. Against our approach, a blend of Shenet precision and human unpredictability, they struggle to maintain cohesive coverage. Platform primary shields at 63% and falling, Krevisk reports. Secondary defense systems activating, but they're struggling to acquire targeting solutions. Enemy organic commanders now at 40% operational capacity, my tactical officer adds. We're detecting increased coordination among their droid forces. Time is running out. If we don't neutralize the command platform before those organic commanders fully deploy, we'll lose our tactical advantage. The Liberation forces are fighting with unprecedented effectiveness, but we still face overwhelming numerical disadvantage. Incoming transmission from Stella. Krevisk announces. Put her through, I order. Field Commander, I've analyzed the command platform's response patterns. Stella's harmonious voice fills the bridge. They're prioritizing defense against larger force concentrations, leaving gaps in coverage against smaller units. Recommend immediate deployment of Protocol Quantum Needle. Protocol Quantum Needle, another contingency plan, one I had considered too risky to implement. It involves sending a small, elite force directly through the chaos of battle to strike at the platform's core control systems. A precision strike while the main assault occupies their defensive resources. The statistical likelihood of success is below 30%, I note. Correct, Stella acknowledges, but the probability of overall mission success drops below 15% if we continue with the current approach, once enemy organic commanders are fully deployed. This is the moment of truth, the test of whether I've truly internalized the lessons of the past 2 weeks. Traditional Shenath doctrine would never authorize a tactic with such a low probability of success, but traditional Shenath doctrine is what we're fighting against. Initiate Protocol Quantum Needle, I command. Select the top 50 organic commanders with the highest adaptability ratings. Authorize maximum tactical freedom. Throughout the battle, Stella has been monitoring our commanders' performance, identifying those who show the greatest aptitude for improvisation and adaptive thinking. These 50 represent the best blend of Shenath precision and human-inspired unpredictability. Quantum Needle Strike Force acknowledged, Krevisk confirms. They're breaking formation now. On the tactical display, 50 small units detach from the main assault, each consisting of 1 organic commander and approximately 1 billion battle droids. A minuscule force compared to the scale of the overall engagement. They dart through the chaotic battlefield, taking advantage of the gaps in the platform's defensive coverage. Enemy organic commanders now at 70% operational capacity, my tactical officer warns. Main assault effectiveness declining as enemy coordination improves. Maintain pressure, I order. The platform must keep its primary defenses focused on the main assault force. Minutes pass in tense silence as we watch the battle unfold. Our main assault continues to hammer at the command platform's defenses, but with diminishing effect as the Imperium's organic commanders bring order to their forces. Meanwhile, the Quantum Needle strike teams weave through increasingly coordinated defensive fire, exploiting momentary gaps, changing vectors unpredictably. Strike Team 7 has reached the platform's maintenance access point, Krevisk reports suddenly. They're initiating breach protocols. A small surge of anticipation runs through me, an emotional response I would have suppressed in my previous life. Status of the other strike teams. 32 still operational, 18 destroyed or disabled, she answers. Teams 12 and 43 are also approaching viable entry points. Enemy organic commanders now at 85% operational capacity, my tactical officer reports grimly. Main assault effectiveness down to 47%. Our window is closing rapidly. Once the Imperium commanders fully deploy, they'll be able to adapt to our tactics, closing the gaps our strike teams are exploiting. Strike Team 7 has breached the platform, Krevisk announces, her voice rising with excitement. They're proceeding to the central control nexus. Teams 12 and 43 have also achieved breaches, my tactical officer adds, a note of surprise in his otherwise controlled voice. 3 teams out of 50, a 6% success rate, abysmal by traditional standards, yet potentially sufficient for our purposes. Each team carries specialized disruptor packages designed by Stella to compromise the platform's central coordination systems. Strike Team 7 has reached the control nexus, Krevisk reports. Deploying disruptors now. The tactical display flickers momentarily, then steadies. For a breathless moment, nothing seems to happen. Then, like a cascading wave, the command platform's defensive systems begin to fail. Not catastrophically, but in rolling sequences of controlled shutdowns. Exactly as Stella's disruptors were designed to execute. Platform primary defense grid is collapsing, my tactical officer confirms, secondary systems attempting to compensate, but coordination efficiency is at critical levels. Enemy organic commanders have lost centralized control, Krevisk adds. Their battle network is fragmenting into isolated sectors. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Without the command platform's coordinated control, the Proxima grid becomes vulnerable, not defeated, but significantly weakened. All forces execute Phase 5, I order. Secure the command platform and begin systematic neutralization of remaining defense installations. As our forces move to exploit the platform's compromised state, I receive another transmission, this one from Colonel Clarkson. Mighty fine dancing, Director, she says, her image appearing on the central display. She looks somewhat disheveled with a small burn mark on her cheek, but her expression is triumphant. Looks like you've got a knack for choreography after all. Our success is not yet assured, I caution. We've neutralized the command platform, but significant enemy forces remain. Sure, but they're fighting like you used to, all rigid formations and predictable patterns, she grins. Against forces that have learned to embrace a little chaos, they don't stand a chance. As I watch our troops secure the command platform and begin systematic operations against the remaining defense installations, I realize she's right. The Imperium forces, deprived of their central coordination, have reverted to basic programmed responses, the very predictable patterns we've learned to exploit. I believe, I say carefully, that we may have demonstrated the efficacy of the hybrid technical approach, Clarkson laughs. That's Shenath for your crazy human ideas actually worked, isn't it? Despite myself, I feel the corner of my mouth twitch in what might, with generous interpretation, be considered a smile. Perhaps, I acknowledge, though I maintain that precision and order still have their place. Never said they didn't, Director, she replied. The trick isn't choosing between order and chaos, it's knowing when to use each and how to blend them together. As I survey the battlefield, the once impregnable Proxima grid now falling to our hybrid forces, I consider the profound truth in her words. For 27,000 cycles, the Sheneth Imperium has pursued perfect order, rejecting adaptation as inefficient, unpredictability as weakness. Today we have proven otherwise. Begin Phase 6, I order, and relay my compliments to all organic commanders. Their adaptability was impressive. As the Liberation Forces secure the Proxima sector, opening the path to the extinction weapon facilities beyond, I permit myself a moment of reflection. 2 weeks ago, I faced execution for failure to adapt to human unpredictability. Today, I've embraced that same quality and achieved what the Imperium would have considered impossible. Perhaps there is wisdom in these human Texas knights, with their quantum swords and ridiculous headgear. Perhaps the universe truly does thrive on uncertainty. I am Field Commander Scanselin, formerly Supreme Security Director of the Sheneth Imperium, now Supreme Commander of the Liberation Forces, and I am winning a war that should be mathematically impossible to win. 1 month has passed since the Battle of Proxima Grid, my first major victory as Commander of the Liberation Forces. 1 month of rapid expansion, of watching our guerrilla tactics shred the once invincible Imperium formations like quantum shears through fabric. 1 month of teaching other Sheneth commanders to embrace unpredictability. Casualty reports from the Vega sector operation, my chief analyst Krevisk announces, placing a data crystal on my desk. I activate it, scanning the figures with what remains of my old Sheneth precision. 17 Liberation troops lost, 12 wounded. 4.3 billion Liberation battle droids destroyed versus 7 billion Imperium battle droids neutralized. I allow myself the small upward twitch at the corner of my mouth that passes for a Sheneth smile. A ratio of 1 to 1.63, not optimal but acceptable. And the salvage operations? Highly successful, Commander, Krevisk replies, her own expression far more openly enthusiastic than traditional Sheneth propriety would permit. Repair teams have already reclaimed approximately 2 billion of the damaged Imperium units. Once reprogrammed, they'll be deployed within 3 cycles. Excellent. The Imperium continues to underestimate the value of battlefield salvage. Their doctrine still classifies it as beneath strategic consideration, Krevisk notes with what I've come to recognize as dry humor. Resource waste is apparently preferable to the perceived indignity of reclaiming damaged units. Their loss, our gain, I observe. Nearly 40% of our current battle droid forces are repurposed Imperium units. The High Command would be horrified if they realized their own discarded machines now fight against them. More than horrified, Commander, the Tactical Applications Division would face mass execution for not predicting such a resource reallocation strategy. Overall, the operation consumed only 8% of projected resources and completed in 64% of the estimated time frame, I note, continuing through the report. And the command staff casualties? Her expression sobers slightly. 3 of our 19 field commanders were lost. All junior grade, but still significant losses given our shortage of organics who can implement the new tactical doctrine. This remains our greatest challenge. While we control trillions of battle droids, we have a severe shortage of organic commanders who can effectively implement what the Knights call quantum adaptive tactics, the blend of Sheneth precision and human unpredictability that has proven so devastatingly effective against Imperium forces. Accelerate the training program, I decide. Reduce theoretical instruction by 30% and increase practical field exercises proportionally. Commander, Krevisk hesitates, the current training protocol was designed for optimal knowledge retention and optimal under traditional Sheneth parameters, I interrupt gently. Remember what Colonel Clarkson told us, sometimes doing things less perfectly leads to better results. Her secondary breathing bladders inflate slightly, a sign of discomfort with this counterintuitive concept, but she nods. Yes, Commander, I'll implement the changes immediately. As she leaves, I return my attention to the holographic map dominating my command center. It displays the current state of the conflict across Sheneth space. Red indicating Imperium control, blue showing liberation territory, and yellow marking contested regions. 3 months ago, the map would have been almost entirely red, with a few isolated specks of blue and yellow. Now, nearly 40% displays as blue or yellow. My attention focuses on one particular system, Calaxis I-4, the primary manufacturing center for Imperium battle droids. The system glows a solid red, surrounded by a ring of heavily fortified defensive installations. Still planning the big one, I see. I turn at the familiar drawl to find Colonel Mackenzie Clarkson leaning against the doorframe of my command center. Behind her stand the Duncan brothers, Swamp and Pockets, their quantum spurs leaving faint blue traces on my immaculate floor. "Colonel Clarkson," I acknowledge with a formal nod. "Your arrival was not on today's schedule." She grins, striding into the command center with that casual disregard for protocol that once irritated me but now strikes me as almost endearing. That's kind of the point, isn't it? Unpredictability and all that. "Besides," Pockets adds, following her inside, "your security protocols could use a real-world stress test. We made it all the way to your command center without setting off a single alarm. That is concerning, I admit. Though I suspect your quantum spurs played a significant role in bypassing our systems." "Among other things," Swamp says cryptically, his imposing frame making my command staff look diminutive by comparison. "But don't worry, we'll help you patch the vulnerabilities before we leave." "To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" I ask, gesturing for them to join me at the strategic display. "Thought we'd check on our star pupil," Clarkson replies, studying the holographic map with appreciation. "Looks like you've been busy. 40% in just a few months? That's faster progress than even Stella predicted." The Imperium's rigid adherence to traditional doctrine makes them surprisingly vulnerable to our approach, I explain. They continue to deploy their forces in mathematically optimal formations, which become predictable to commanders who understand both Sheneth precision and human adaptability. Translation: they're fighting yesterday's war, Pockets says, examining the display of Calaxis 4 with professional interest. "While you're fighting tomorrow's." "Precisely." I magnify the Calaxis system, highlighting the defensive structures. Though tomorrow's war requires significantly more manufacturing capacity than we currently possess. Despite our salvage operations yielding impressive results, we cannot sustain our expansion through reclamation alone, hence my interest in Calaxis 4. "Your salvage program is something else," Swamp comments, studying the resource allocation figures on a nearby display. "Never seen anyone turn battlefield cleanup into a strategic advantage quite like this." "The Imperium considers salvage operations beneath their dignity," I explain. "In their doctrine, damaged units are to be abandoned and replaced, not repaired. It's seen as more efficient to manufacture new units than to reclaim damaged ones." "Wasteful," Pockets observes. "Arrogant," Clarkson adds. "Both," I agree, "and a critical oversight we've exploited extensively. Nearly 40% of our current force consists of repurposed Imperium droids." Clarkson whistles softly. "That's impressive even by our standards, but capturing Calaxis, the primary droid factory for the entire Imperium, they'll have that place locked down tighter than a Texas bank on Sunday. Which is precisely why they won't expect us to target it," I counter. "High Command's tactical projections will calculate that we lack sufficient resources for such an operation, making it a low-priority defense concern compared to more mathematically feasible targets." The three knights exchange glances, a silent communication passing between them. "You've been paying attention," Swamp observes with approval. "Hit 'em where they think you can't, not where they think you will. If we can capture the Calaxis facilities intact," I continue, "we would double our droid production capacity overnight. The strategic balance would shift dramatically." "And you want our help planning this operation?" Clarkson surmises. "Your insights would be valuable," I acknowledge, "but more importantly, I require access to Stella's tactical modeling capacity. The operation parameters exceed our current predictive capabilities. Well, you're in luck, she says, producing a small quantum chip from her pocket. Stella sent this along. It's a secure communications node, direct link to her primary systems. She's been following your progress and already has some thoughts on Calaxis. I accept the chip, noting the distinctive quantum fluctuations emanating from its surface. Please convey my appreciation. Tell her yourself, Pocket suggests. She responds well to direct gratitude, says most organics forget she has feelings. This gives me pause. The concept of an artificial intelligence having feelings is still difficult for my Sheneth sensibilities to fully embrace. Yet I've learned that much of the Knight's effectiveness stems from their willingness to accept such counterintuitive notions. I shall do so, I promise. Now, perhaps you would care to review our preliminary planning for the Calaxis operation? Happy to, Clarkson agreed. But first, any chance of getting something to eat? We've been quantum jumping across 3 sectors to avoid Imperium patrols, and standard rations only go so far. I signal to an aide. Arrange a meal for our guests in my private dining area. Include both Sheneth and human nutritional options. And bourbon? Swamp inquires hopefully. We have acquired a modest supply for diplomatic purposes, I confirm, which earns appreciative nods from all 3 knights. As we move to the adjacent chamber, I find myself struck by how comfortable I've become with these humans in such a short time. 3 months ago, I viewed them as chaotic barbarians with inexplicably effective weapons. Now I find their presence reassuring, their unpredictability a strength rather than a liability. So, I say as we settle around the dining table, tell me how your other operations are progressing. The human involvement in this conflict remains limited to advisory roles, correct? Mostly, Clarkson confirms, as an aide serves drinks. We've got knights embedded with most major liberation battle groups, but our direct combat involvement is minimal. This needs to be your revolution, not ours. Though we do get our hands dirty when necessary, Pockets adds, accepting a glass of bourbon with evident appreciation, like that mess in the Cygnus sector last week. I received no reports of significant human engagement in Cygnus, I note with surprise. That's because there wasn't supposed to be any, Swamp explains, his massive frame making the chair creak slightly as he shifts. We were just observing a liberation raid on a communications relay when an Imperium capital ship showed up unexpectedly. Your folks were about to get vaporized, so we improvised. How exactly? I ask, intrigued. The brothers exchange grins. Let's just say that capital ship had a surprised look on its metaphorical face when 3 knights with quantum swords appeared on its bridge, Pocket says. We were in and out before anyone knew what happened. Ship's in liberation hands now. Being repurposed as we speak, Swamp adds. Your salvage teams are having a field day with it. Never seen folks so excited about recycling enemy tech. I process this information with interest. You infiltrated an Imperium capital vessel with just 3 operatives. The security protocols on such vessels are among the most sophisticated in the Imperium. Sophisticated, sure, Clarkson acknowledges, but still based on predictable algorithms. Once you understand the pattern, finding the gaps is just a matter of timing. The meal arrives. A careful selection of Shenath protein structures and human cuisine prepared by our culinary staff, who have been studying human nutritional requirements with typical Shenath thoroughness. So, I say as the knights sample the food with appreciative murmurs, I've been meaning to ask, your designations, Swamp and Pockets. I presume these are not your formal identifiers? The brothers laugh. A sound that still strikes me as remarkably unrestrained compared to Sheneth expressions of amusement. Nicknames, Pockets explains. Human tradition. Most knights have them. They derive from... I prompt, genuinely curious about this aspect of human culture. Usually something embarrassing that happened to you early on, Swamp replies, taking a hearty swig of bourbon. Mine comes from my first week as a knight recruit. There was an incident in the lavatory facilities. A quantum regulator ruptured in the waste reclamation system, Pockets elaborates, clearly enjoying his brother's slight discomfort. Most people ran. Swamp here decided to fix it. The environmental systems were at risk of cascade failure, Swamp defends himself. Someone had to do something, and he did, Pockets continues. Crawled right into that mess and fixed it with his bare hands, saved the facility, but when he came out, I smelled like a swamp and was covered in filth from head to toe. Swamp finishes with a resigned shrug. The name stuck. A practical solution to an immediate problem, I observe. Quite sensible, despite the unfortunate consequences. That's Swamp for you, Clarkson agreed. Practical to a fault. And Pockets? I inquire, turning to the smaller Duncan brother. Pockets grins. Much less heroic. I showed up at the recruitment office in cargo shorts. The recruiter hadn't ever seen them before and remarked how there were so many Pockets. He then put Pockets as my name on the recruitment forms. I blink, processing this explanation. Your military designation was determined by your choice of clothing at recruitment? Welcome to human organizational efficiency, Clarkson says with a laugh. Sometimes the most random things stick. And what of your designation, Colonel? I ask. Do you also possess such a nickname? The three knights exchange glances and something unspoken passes between them. That's a story for another time, Clarkson says with a mysterious smile. Let's focus on your Calaxis operation for now. I recognize the deflection but respect her privacy. Very well. The primary challenge is penetrating the outer defense grid without alerting the inner security systems. Conventional wisdom would suggest a large-scale assault to overwhelm their defenses, but conventional wisdom is exactly what they're prepared for. Pockets interjects, instantly focused on the tactical problem. You need something they won't see coming. Precisely. I activate a holographic display above the dining table, showing the Calaxis system in detail. My tactical staff has devised 17 potential approaches, but all suffer from the same fundamental flaw. They operate within parameters that Imperium defense algorithms are designed to counter. Swamp studies the display, his expression turning thoughtful. What if you don't attack at all? I tilt my head. Clarify. Well, you're thinking about this as a military operation, he explains, gesturing at the defensive installations surrounding Calaxis 4. But what if it was a delivery instead? Clarkson's eyes light up. Trojan horse. Exactly, Swamp confirms. I am unfamiliar with this tactical designation, I admit. Ancient Earth strategy, Pockets explains. The city of Troy couldn't be taken by force, so the attackers built a giant wooden horse, hid soldiers inside, and presented it as a gift. Trojans brought it into their city, and during the night the hidden soldiers emerged and opened the gates from inside. I consider this approach deception rather than direct confrontation. But Calaxis receives thousands of shipments daily, all subject to rigorous security protocol. True, Clarkson agrees, but those protocols are designed to detect weapons, explosives, unauthorized personnel. What they're not designed for is detecting something that's supposed to be there. Battle droids, I realize, understanding dawning. They're a droid manufacturing facility. They expect to receive shipments of droid components. Bingo, Pocket says with a grin. You send in shipments of damaged droids for recycling, except they're not damaged. They're yours, programmed to activate at a specific time and secure the facility from within. The perfect inversion of their own doctrine, I muse, appreciating the irony. Using their disdain for salvage operations against them, they'll never suspect we would return their own discarded units. It would seem illogical and beneath consideration. It's an elegantly simple solution, one that exploits the Imperium's assumption that threats come from outside, not from what they willingly bring inside their defenses. This has merit, I acknowledge, but the security scanning would detect functional droids disguised as non-functional units. Not if they're genuinely non-functional when scanned, Swamp suggests. You just need a way to reactivate them after they've passed inspection. Quantum triggers, Clarkson adds. Remote activation through quantum entanglement, undetectable by conventional scanning methods. I'm impressed despite myself. In mere minutes, they've identified an approach that my tactical staff, still thinking in predominantly Sheneth patterns despite their training, had overlooked entirely. This will require significant preparation, I note. already calculating the logistical requirements. We would need to establish a legitimate shipping operation, create convincing documentation, ensure our droids pass visual inspection, all things your people excel at, Clarkson points out. Detailed planning, perfect documentation, meticulous execution. You just needed the unconventional idea to plug into your conventional excellence. A synthesis of approaches, I murmur, echoing the toast we shared when I first joined the Liberation. Exactly, she agrees. You bring the precision, we bring the unpredictability. Together we create something neither could achieve alone. As the meal progresses, we refine the concept further. The Knights contribute broad strokes innovative thinking, while I apply Shanath thoroughness to identify and resolve potential complications. By the time the bourbon is more than half consumed, we have the outline of an operation that might actually succeed. One last question, I say as an aide clears away the remains of our meal. The quantum triggers for reactivating the droids? Our technical teams lack experience with such technology. That's where Stella comes in, Clarkson replies. She's already working on the design specifications. She can transmit them directly to your manufacturing facilities through the quantum chip I gave you. I nod, mentally adding this to the operational timeline. How soon can you provide Knights to assist with the specialized aspects of the operation? We've already got a team standing by, Pockets reveals. 6 Knights, all with experience in covert installations. They can be here within 48 hours. You anticipated my request, I observe. Stella ran the projections, Swamp explains. She calculated a 93% probability that your next major target would be Calaxus, given your resource constraints and strategic objectives. The AI is remarkably insightful, I acknowledge. She prefers perceptive, Clarkson says with a slight smile. She's been studying your operational patterns. Says you're developing a distinctive hybrid style. Shanath precision with human unpredictability layered in at key decision points. Is that a compliment or a concern, I ask, genuinely unsure. Definitely a compliment, she assures me. You're creating something new, not just copying our approach, but integrating it with your own strengths. That's exactly what we hoped would happen. After the meal, we returned to the command center to brief my senior staff on the new operational concept. As expected, there is some resistance, particularly from those who have most recently defected from the Imperium and still cling to traditional Shanath doctrine. This approach relies too heavily on deception, objects General Vexen, formerly an Imperium fleet commander. The statistical variables are incalculable. We should focus on targets with more predictable outcomes. Predictable for us means predictable for them, I counter. The Imperium's weakness is its inability to adapt to approaches outside its tactical models. We must exploit that weakness. Commander, another officer interjects. Manufacturing false shipping credentials that can withstand Imperium verification would require resources we cannot spare from current operations. Then we don't falsify them, Pockets suggests. We use real ones. All eyes turn to him. Explain, I prompt. You've captured plenty of Imperium vessels with legitimate access codes, he points out. Instead of trying to create perfect fakes, use the real thing. Hijack an actual shipment in transit, replace the contents with your droids and send it on its way. The documentation will be flawless because it's genuine. A murmur runs through my staff. A sound I've come to recognize as the Shanath equivalent of excited agreement. They're learning to appreciate the elegant simplicity of human-style improvisation. This approach has merit, General Vexen concedes reluctantly, though the operational security concerns remain significant. Which is why we'll prepare 17 alternative operations simultaneously, I decide, small-scale diversionary actions across the sector. The Imperium's analytical systems will detect the pattern of preparation and calculate that we're planning a distributed campaign, exactly what they would expect from a force with our resource limitations. Hiding in plain sight, Clarkson approves. They'll be so busy looking for the pattern they expect that they'll miss the one thing that doesn't fit. As the briefing continues, I observe the interaction between my Shanath officers and the 3 Knights. The initial stiffness has given way to a cautious but genuine exchange of ideas. My people are learning that human unpredictability doesn't mean chaos, it means adaptability. The Knights, in turn, are learning to appreciate Shanatharith rather than dismissing it as rigid. 3 hours later, as the operational planning reaches its preliminary conclusion, I dismiss my staff to begin implementation. The 3 Knights remain behind, studying the holographic display of Calaxis 4. "You've built something impressive here," Clarkson says quietly. "A month ago, these people couldn't conceive of deviating from established doctrine. Now they're embracing approaches that would have been unthinkable." "They are adapting because they must," I reply. "The Imperium's rigidity is proving fatal in this conflict. Even those most committed to traditional doctrine can see the mathematics of our success." "It's more than that," Swamp disagrees. "They're following your example. You were the embodiment of Sheneth precision and order, Supreme Security Director, enforcer of the Imperium's will. When you embraced change, it gave them permission to do the same." This perspective unsettles me slightly. I have never considered myself a revolutionary figure, merely a pragmatist who recognized that survival required adaptation. "The transition has not been without cost," I observe. "Many still struggle with the uncertainty inherent in our new approach. The psychological toll is considerable." "Change always is," Pocket says with unexpected gravity. "But staying the same when everything around you is changing, that costs more in the end." I cannot dispute this wisdom. The Imperium's refusal to adapt is precisely what has made it vulnerable to our hybrid approach. "One last thing before we go," Clarkson says, producing a small package from inside her jacket. "A gift from the Knights. Thought you might find it useful." Inside the package is a quantum spur, the distinctive device that Knights wear on their boots, generating those characteristic blue energy trails. But this one is different, modified to fit Shenath physiology. "It's calibrated to your specific quantum signature," she explains. "Stella helped design it. Won't give you all the capabilities of a full Knight, but it'll help with certain situations." I accept the gift with genuine appreciation, recognizing it for what it is, not merely a technological tool, but a symbol of acceptance. "I am honored." "Don't get too sentimental on us, Director," she teases. "It's just practical. You're too valuable to lose if you get cornered by Imperium forces." But her expression tells me it's more than that. I have become more than an ally to these humans. I have become a friend, a concept as foreign to traditional Shenath culture as quantum uncertainty once was. As they prepare to depart, I find myself reflecting on the strange path that has brought me here. 3 months ago, I faced execution for failure to defeat these very same humans. Now, I lead a revolution that embraces their methods while preserving Shenath's strengths. I coordinate with their artificial intelligence, implement their unpredictable tactics, and even accept their customized technology. "We'll be in touch through Stella," Clarkson says as they reach the door. "The Knights assigned to your operation will arrive on schedule. Try not to start the Calaxis invasion without them." "Your contribution is appreciated," I reply formally, then add with what might almost be described as humor, though I make no promises regarding timing. Unpredictability has its advantages after all. She laughs, a sound I have come to find strangely satisfying. "Now you're getting it. Good hunting, Commander. Show the Imperium what happens when order learns to dance with chaos." After they depart, I return to my private quarters, contemplating the quantum spur they've gifted me. It represents everything that has changed in my existence, the fusion of Sheneth precision with human adaptability, of calculated order with creative chaos. I place it carefully on my desk next to the holographic projector showing the Calaxis system. In 2 weeks, if our operation succeeds, the Liberation will control the Imperium's primary droid manufacturing facility. Our production capacity will double, the strategic balance will shift dramatically, and it will happen not through overwhelming force, but through a blend of deception and precision that neither humans nor Shenath could have devised alone. I activate my communications terminal, interfacing with the quantum chip Clarkson provided. "Stella, are you receiving?" Loud and clear, Commander Scanselin. The AI's harmonious voice responds. I take it the knights have departed? Yes. They provided valuable insights for the Calaxis operation. I expected nothing less. They're quite inventive when properly motivated. There's a warmth to her artificial voice that still surprises me. I've completed the initial quantum trigger designs, transmitting to your manufacturing facilities now. Thank you, Stella. Your assistance is appreciated. I hesitate, then add, on a personal level, not merely a tactical one. Well now, she replies, and I detect what sounds like pleased surprise in her tone. That's the most Shenath expression of gratitude I've ever received. You're welcome, Commander, both tactically and personally. As I review the operation plans one final time before retiring, I find myself reflecting on the Duncan brothers' nicknames and the stories behind them, such trivial, chaotic origins for military designations, a stark contrast to the meticulously calculated rank structures of Shenath society. Yet there is something oddly appealing about this human approach. Their designations carry meaning, history, context. They tell stories that mathematical precision never could. Perhaps when the Calaxis operation succeeds, I might consider accepting the nickname some of my officers have begun using privately. They think I am unaware of it, but little escapes the attention of a former Supreme Security Director. Quantum, they call me, a reference to my embrace of human adaptive tactics and my association with the Knights. It is imprecise, informal, and entirely non-regulation. I find I rather like it. Secure transmission established. Operation Fractal update commencing. The holographic display in the briefing chamber shows dozens of faces, some in person at Texas Knight Command, others patched in from across the front lines where Knights are embedded with Liberation forces. Everyone wears the same expression of professional intensity, even those whose quantum spurs still carry the dust of recent combat. I adjust my Stetson, not out of habit, but because I know it projects a certain image. Command officers around the table anticipate my report. The Texas Knight High Command, including General Tact and Admiral Falconer, watch from the head of the table. In holographic windows, field operatives pause their activities to listen. Colonel Mackenzie Clarkson reporting, I begin, dropping my carefully cultivated drawl. Operation Fractal has reached Phase 4 ahead of schedule. The Shenath Imperium is currently experiencing unprecedented internal division, with approximately 43% of its territory now under rebellion control. I gesture to the strategic map, which blossoms into a three-dimensional representation of Shenath space. Red, blue, and yellow sectors pulse with activity markers. 3 months ago, we faced a unified empire with overwhelming numerical superiority and a near-fatical commitment to rigid military doctrine. Today, we face a splintered enemy whose own weapons, resources, and citizens now fight against it. General Tact nods with measured satisfaction. And our primary asset in this division? Former Supreme Security Director Scanselin continues to perform exactly as anticipated, I reply, bringing up footage of the Shenath commander in his Liberation headquarters. His adoption of our tactical innovations has accelerated beyond projections. The Liberation forces have claimed 7 major Imperium strongholds in the past month alone. Casualties? Admiral Falconer asks. Human losses remain minimal. 12 Knights wounded across all fronts, none fatally. Liberation forces are suffering approximately a 1-to-1 exchange ratio against Imperium forces when accounting for battlefield salvage operations. And the resource expenditure for our continued support? Less than 15% of projected allocations, I confirm. The psychological warfare aspect has proven exceptionally cost-befitting. For every quantum spur or piece of technology we provide, we receive over 20 times the strategic value in intelligence and influence. I pause, letting this sink in. When Operation Fractal was first proposed, many in command doubted that a psychological warfare approach could work against the logical, ordered minds of the Shenath. They'd pushed for conventional military solutions, overwhelming force, direct confrontations. But I'd seen something different during my capture at Echo 9-1. I'd seen cracks in their perfect order, doubts, questions. The beginnings of adaptation. Let's be clear about what we've accomplished. I continue. Through minimal direct intervention, we've transformed a war that would have cost billions of human lives and consumed our industrial capacity for decades into a largely internal Shanath conflict. The threat to humanity has been reduced by 78%, with Imperium forces now primarily focused on quelling rebellion rather than advancing into human territory. And the Calaxus operation? General Tact asks. In progress as we speak. If successful, it will further accelerate the Imperium's fragmentation. I pull up the operation schematics. Scanselin has embraced our Trojan horse strategy completely, believing it was primarily his own adaptation of our suggestions. Admiral Falconer's expression remains carefully neutral. You planted the vulnerability in his thinking. I did, I acknowledge without false modesty. The knight's visit was carefully timed to coincide with his initial planning phase. The Duncan brothers and I nudged his tactical approach in the direction we wanted, while making him believe he was simply synthesizing Shanath precision with human unpredictability. And the quantum spur gift? I allow myself a small smile, a calculated gesture of trust and acceptance that doubled as our most sophisticated surveillance package to date. He keeps it in his private quarters, right beside his planning console. Clever, Tact admits. Now, what about the state of the rebellion itself? We're hearing reports of fractures beneath the unified front. That's where things get interesting, I reply. Stella has been monitoring internal liberation communications. I'll let her present that aspect directly. I step aside as Stella's avatar materializes in the center of the briefing room, a shifting pattern of blue light that somehow conveys both femininity and otherworldliness without attempting human mimicry. Thank you, Colonel. Stella's harmonic voice fills the chamber. My analysis of intercepted communications indicates significant underlying tensions within the liberation movement. While currently united against the Imperium, the rebel factions have fundamentally different visions for what comes after victory. Her avatar shifts, displaying a network of connections between key liberation commanders. I've identified at least 8 distinct factions forming within the liberation leadership. 3 advocate for a reformed but still centralized Shanath government. 2 push for complete dissolution into independent sectors. 1 seeks to establish closer ties with humanity, while another views us with nearly as much suspicion as they do the current Imperium. And Scanselin? Admiral Falconer asks. Where does he fall in this spectrum? That's perhaps the most interesting development, Stella replies, her avatar shifting to highlight recordings from Scanselin's private quarters. Despite his apparent embrace of human unpredictability and collaborative approaches, Scanselin's private conversations reveal more traditional ambitions. The recording plays, Scanselin speaking with his inner circle of commanders, his voice much more formal than when knights are present. The humans provide useful tactical innovations, but their chaotic approach is ultimately unsustainable for a civilization of our scale. Once the Imperium falls, we will need to establish a new order, one that incorporates adaptability within a framework of precision and control. The liberation was never meant to fracture the Shanath people permanently. It was meant to evolve us. Another recording begins, Scanselin alone in his quarters dictating to his private journal. The quantum spur they gifted me represents everything they believe I have become. A synthesis of order and chaos. They do not understand that chaos is merely a tool to be wielded in service of a greater order. The humans mistake adaptability for unpredictability. I do not seek to embrace randomness, but to harness it. When the war ends, the new Shanath civilization will maintain its fundamental nature, order, precision, hierarchy, while incorporating lessons learned from human tactics. The Knights believe they are helping birth a more chaotic society. They are merely helping us evolve into a more perfect order. Well, General Tact says as the recording ends, it seems our friend hasn't changed as much as he believes. On the contrary, I disagree. He's changed dramatically, but change doesn't mean becoming someone else entirely. It means evolving who you already are. I step forward again as Stella's avatar recedes. Scanselin was never going to become human. He was never going to abandon his core Sheneth values. What matters is that he's questioning the rigidity of those values. He's creating space for adaptation within order, not replacing order with chaos. And this serves our purposes? Admiral Falconer asks. Perfectly, I confirm. We never expected or wanted the Sheneth to become like us. We simply needed them divided and questioning their own assumptions. A fractured Sheneth civilization, even if parts of it rebuild into new empires, will never again present the unified threat that the original Imperium did. I bring up new projections showing the likely state of Sheneth space 6 months from now. A patchwork of competing territories, alliances, and independent regions. When this conflict ends, the Sheneth will be too busy sorting out their internal power structures to focus on external expansion for at least a generation. Some factions will seek alliances with humanity. Others will isolate themselves. A few may remain hostile, but none will command the resources of a unified empire. And Scanselin himself, Tact asks, if he aims to establish a new empire after the liberation succeeds, let him try, I reply with confidence. First, he'll face opposition from other liberation factions with different visions. Second, his new empire, if he manages to create one, will incorporate the adaptability we've taught him. It will be more flexible, less predictable, and ultimately less dangerous than the current Imperium. I pause, considering how to frame this next part. More importantly, he'll never be able to fully purge the influence we've had on his thinking. He believes he's simply incorporating our tactics into his ordered worldview. He doesn't realize that questioning one fundamental assumption opens the door to questioning others. Admiral Falconer leans forward. You sound almost fond of him, Colonel. I maintain my professional demeanor, but there's no hiding the truth from people who've known me this long. Scanselin is an exceptional mind. In different circumstances, he might have made an excellent knight. But affection doesn't cloud my judgment. He remains a tool, a remarkably effective one, in our larger strategy. Your optimism is noted, Judas, Admiral Falconer says quietly, using the nickname I've carried for 15 years. The name only those with highest clearance know, earned through a string of psychological operations that all ended the same way, with my targets destroyed by their own people after I'd turned them. A ripple of tension passes through the room. Everyone here knows my record. 5 previous high-value enemy assets, hundreds of lower-value assets beyond that, all manipulated into becoming tools for humanity, all eventually eliminated when they were no longer useful or began to pose a threat. Not by my hand directly, that would be inefficient. By their own people, their own systems, their own fatal flaws that I had carefully nurtured and exploited. Scanselin may prove different, I say, not bothering to deny the implication. His utility continues to outweigh any potential threat, for now, Tact notes, but your track record suggests a certain finality to your operations, hence the nickname, I acknowledge with a slight nod. But each asset is evaluated on their own merits. If Scanselin can be contained rather than eliminated after his usefulness ends, that would be my recommendation. Some of the younger knights look uncomfortable. They know me as Colonel Clarkson, the drawling, bourbon-drinking operative who charms her way through impossible situations. Few outside this room know me as Judas, the handler whose assets inevitably face betrayal, often from their own side. Which brings us to the next phase, General Tack says, mercifully changing the subject. Assuming the Calaxis operation succeeds, what comes next? I pull up the timeline for Operation Fractal's final phases. We begin selectively supporting different liberation factions, ensuring no single group gains overwhelming advantage. We maintain our advisory presence but gradually reduce direct involvement. And we prepare diplomatic channels for the inevitable moment when the various Sheneth factions seek alliances after their civil war ends. And if Scanselin discovers the true extent of our manipulation? Admiral Falconer asks. This is the question I've been anticipating. The one that keeps me awake some nights, though I'd never admit it to anyone but Stella. He won't, I state with more certainty than I feel. The layers of deception are too deep, the evidence too carefully managed. He believes our help comes from genuine respect for his adaptation. Even if he suspected, he could never prove it without discrediting himself in the process. I don't mention the contingency plans, the kill switches built into every piece of gifted technology, the knights embedded with other liberation commanders who have separate orders if Scanselin ever becomes a genuine threat. Some things don't need to be said aloud, even in secure briefings. One more thing, I add, bringing up footage of liberation training operations. The techniques we've taught them are deliberately incomplete, effective enough to defeat the current Imperium, but missing crucial elements that would make them truly dangerous to humanity. They believe they've learned our secrets. They've only learned what we wanted them to know. General Tax studies the footage, then nods. Very well, Colonel. Operation Fractal continues as planned. Keep us updated on the Calaxis situation. One last question, a younger knight commander asks over the comm. Scanselin and his commanders have asked about your nickname. What will you tell them when they press the issue? The room goes quiet. Everyone with sufficient clearance knows exactly why I deflect questions about my nickname. Nothing that would compromise the operation, I reply coolly. I give them something colorful enough to satisfy curiosity without revealing anything significant. But never the truth, Tact adds, almost gently. No asset would cooperate if they knew they were working with Judas. I meet his gaze steadily. No asset has ever needed to know. What matters is results, not reputation. As the briefing concludes and the connections fade, only Stella's avatar remains, visible just to me through my personal quantum link. You didn't tell them everything, she observes, her harmonic voice pitched for my ears alone. They don't need to know everything, I reply quietly, just enough to continue supporting the operation. You didn't mention your growing concern that Scanselin might be more perceptive than you've given him credit for, I sigh, finally allowing myself to drop the perfect posture now that we're alone. Because it's not relevant yet. He suspects something, yes, but suspicion isn't knowledge. And if he discovers the listening devices? If he realizes the extent to which he's been manipulated? Then I'll handle it, I reply, with the certainty that comes from years of contingency planning. One way or another. Like you handle the others? Stella asks, her tone neutral but the implication clear. Is that why you avoid telling him your nickname? Because deep down, you don't want to be Judas again? I avoid telling him because it would compromise the operation, I say sharply. Nothing more. Of course. Her avatar shifts in what I've come to recognize as her equivalent of a shrug. The line between manipulation and genuine connection often blurs in long-term psychological operations. It's why most operatives are rotated out after 6 months. You've been with Scanselin for nearly a year now. I'm fine, Stella. Of course you are. Her tone suggests she knows better, but won't press the issue. Just remember that while Scanselin believes he's finding balance between order and chaos, you must maintain your own balance as well. Between the mission and my humanity? I ask with a wry smile. Between what you're pretending to be and who you actually are, she corrects. Even the best operatives can lose themselves if they play a role too long. I reach up and adjust my Stetson, a gesture that started as calculated theater but has somehow become habit. I know exactly who I am, Stella. I'm the woman who started a rebellion with a captive's bluff and a quantum-calculated drawl. I'm the reason the biggest threat to humanity in centuries is now tearing itself apart from within. You're also Judas, she reminds me quietly, the operative whose assets never survive. The question is whether Scanselin will follow the pattern or break it. The mission comes first, I reply, though the words feel hollower than they used to. If Scanselin becomes a threat, he'll be neutralized like any other. If not, I trail off, unwilling to complete the thought. Stella's avatar pulses in what might be concern. Just be careful. The deception that makes you effective also isolates you. That's the job, I reply simply. Now let's focus on Calaxis. If this works, we're one step closer to ending this war. As I gather my gear and prepare to return to the field, I can't help but wonder what Scanselin would think if he knew the truth. That his great liberation, his synthesis of order and chaos, began as a psychological warfare operation designed by a knight whose previous assets all met with unfortunate ends. Would he appreciate the elegant precision of the deception? Or would he revert to the rigid Shan'an commander who once sentenced me to interrogation? Would he realize that working with Judas meant his own eventual betrayal was all but certain? I suppose I'll find out if my cover ever breaks. Until then, I have a rebellion to manage, an empire to dismantle, and a former enemy to continue manipulating, all while making him believe it's his idea. Just another day in the life of a Texas knight. Come on, Stella, I say, my drawl sliding back into place as easily as putting on a familiar coat. We've got a facility to infiltrate and a whole mess of battle droids to liberate. As we leave the briefing room, I slip fully back into the character of Colonel Mackenzie Clarkson, the swaggering, bourbon-drinking knight with quantum spurs and an exaggerated accent. The perfect deception isn't the one they never discover. It's the one they embrace so completely that even when they suspect the truth, they choose to believe the lie. And Scanselin, for all his brilliant adaptation, is still choosing to believe what I've carefully crafted for him to see. Poor bastard never stood a chance. Yet, for the first time in my career, I find myself hoping an asset might survive my influence. Bad luck for him that he met Judas instead of the Mackenzie Clarkson he thinks he knows. I am Supreme Commander Scanselin of the Liberation Forces, formerly Supreme Security Director of the now shattered Shan'eth Imperium, and I stand at the precipice of victory. 1 month has passed since the Calaxis operation, a resounding success that doubled our manufacturing capacity and tipped the strategic balance decisively in our favor. 1 month of relentless advance as Imperial strongholds fall like carefully arranged mathematical sequences. 1 month of planning for what comes after victory. My private planning chamber aboard the Liberation flagship, Adaptive Precision, displays the current state of Shan'eth space. Nearly 87% glows blue under our control. The remaining Imperial territory consists of scattered pockets, mostly heavily fortified core worlds inhabited by those most fanatically devoted to the old ways. Supreme Commander, my Chief Aide Krivisk announces from the doorway, Colonel Clarkson has arrived. She requests an immediate private audience. I feel a momentary flicker of, what? Anticipation? Wariness? After months of working alongside the Texas Knights, I still cannot fully categorize my reactions to their unpredictable nature. Send her in, I order, deactivating the most sensitive planning displays with a subtle gesture. While I have come to trust the human's tactical insights, certain aspects of post-victory planning are best kept confidential. Colonel Mackenzie Clarkson enters my chamber with that characteristic blend of casual confidence and calculated precision that once baffled me, but now makes perfect sense. The quantum spurs on her boots leave faint blue trails across my immaculate floor, a visual reminder of the chaotic element she represents in my ordered world. Mighty impressive progress, Commander, she drawls, gesturing at the strategic display. Looks like the Imperium's down to its last gasp. Indeed, I acknowledge. Current calculations suggest complete military victory within 18 standard cycles. The liberation of all Shan'eth space is now a mathematical certainty. She studies the map with professional interest, her expression revealing nothing beyond mild approval. 18 cycles? I'd have guessed longer, given how stubborn those last Imperial holdouts tend to be. The analysis incorporates psychological factors in addition to purely military considerations, I explain. High command loyalists are fanatical, but they are not irrational. Once the probability of defeat exceeds 98%, they will calculate that negotiated surrender offers better preservation of core Shan'eth values than pointless resistance. Clarkson raises an eyebrow. That's mighty optimistic, even for you. It is not optimism, it is pattern recognition. I adjust the display to show previous Imperial surrenders. The capitulation threshold has proven remarkably consistent across 17 major engagements. The remaining Imperial commanders were all trained in the same doctrine as I was. They will recognize futility when confronted with it. "And then what?" she asks, moving closer to the display. "Once you've won, what happens to all this?" Her hand sweeps across the blue expanse that was once the unified Imperium. "This is the question I have been anticipating and preparing for since the liberation began. The moment when humanity's expectations and my own plans must be delicately reconciled." The liberation movement has many factions, with different visions for our future. I begin carefully. "A period of negotiation and restructuring will naturally follow victory." "Naturally," she agrees, watching me with those disconcertingly perceptive eyes. "But I'm asking what you envision, Commander." I consider my response with precision. The human knights have been valuable allies, their unpredictable tactics essential to our success, yet they have never hidden their preference for a fragmented post-imperial reality, many smaller Sheneth states rather than a unified civilization, a vision that fundamentally conflicts with what must happen for my people to truly evolve. "I believe the time has come to discuss peace terms," I say, redirecting slightly. "The Human Confederation has been an invaluable ally in this conflict. I wish to formalize the cessation of hostilities between our peoples." Clarkson studies me for a moment, then nods. "That's actually why I'm here. Humanity is prepared to formally end the war and help establish a new galactic order." She activates her personal quantum projector, displaying a proposal that makes my secondary breathing bladders contract involuntarily. "A federated system," she explains, "with each major Sheneth sector establishing its own autonomous government. Humanity would help mediate disputes, provide security guarantees, and ensure peaceful transition. Each sector would maintain internal autonomy while participating in a loose confederacy for matters of mutual concern." I analyze the proposal with growing dismay. This is fragmentation, not federation, division, not unity. The end of the Sheneth civilization as a coherent entity. The liberation factions would never agree to such a dramatic dissolution, I observe, maintaining my composed exterior despite the calculations racing through my mind. "Actually, they already have," Clarkson replies, expanding the display to show signatures and agreements from various liberation leaders, many from my own inner circle. While you've been focusing on military operations, most regional commanders have been discussing post-war arrangements with us. They're tired of centralized control. They want autonomy, freedom to develop their own approaches. This revelation should surprise me, but it doesn't. I have long been aware of the fractures forming within the liberation, the competing visions, the private ambitions. I had calculated that these would be manageable after victory was secured, when a strong central authority could provide the necessary structure for controlled adaptation. What I had not calculated was humanity's direct intervention in these internal matters. "I see," I say carefully. "And what role do you envision for the Central Liberation Command structure in this arrangement?" "You'd be invited to help establish the transition framework," she says, watching me closely. "Your expertise would be invaluable in ensuring stability through the process. A facilitator of my own civilization's dismantling, a technician overseeing the controlled demolition of everything I have worked to preserve and evolve. And if we prefer to maintain a more unified approach?" I ask, allowing a hint of my true position to emerge. Clarkson's expression shifts subtly, a minute tightening around her eyes, a barely perceptible adjustment of posture. "You mean if you prefer a unified approach, don't you, Commander?" The distinction is not lost on me. As Supreme Commander of the Liberation Forces, my preference naturally reflects our collective strategic interests. "Cut the diplomatic dance, Scanselin," she says, dropping her drawl entirely for perhaps the first time since I've known her. "We both know what you really want. You've been planning to establish a new empire, more adaptive than the old one, but still an empire, with yourself at its center." The directness of her statement catches me momentarily off guard, though I maintain my outward composure. You seem quite certain of my intention. We've worked together for months, she replies. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the pattern in your private conversations? The carefully compartmentalized planning sessions? The way you've been positioning loyalists in key sectors? A chill runs through my circulatory system. Her knowledge is too specific, too detailed. Somehow she has access to information that should be impenetrable to outside observation. You've been monitoring me, I state, pieces falling into place with cold clarity. The quantum spur you gifted me, the communication devices, they were surveillance instruments. She doesn't deny it. This is your chance, Scanselin, your opportunity to make the galaxy a better, freer place for your people, to break the cycle of imperial control that has stagnated Sheneth development for millennia, by fracturing us into competing sectors, by dissolving the unity that has been our civilization's foundation for 27,000 cycles. I cannot keep the edge from my voice now. That is not freedom, it is chaos. It's evolution, she counters, the kind you claim to value. Evolution requires structure, direction, purpose. I gesture at her proposal with undisguised disdain. This is dissolution masquerading as freedom. Clarkson sighs, and for a moment I see something almost like regret in her expression. I was afraid you'd see it that way. But consider what you're up against. Humanity would fully support the new Federation. We'd guarantee its security, help rebuild. In exchange for what? I interrupt. Fealty, submission. In exchange for peace, she says simply. For the chance to build something together instead of continuing cycles of conflict. Peace on your terms, I observe. With humanity as the ultimate arbiter, better that than the alternative. Her tone shifts, becoming cooler, more professional. You should know that humanity hasn't been idle during this conflict. We've been upgrading battle droid designs. The facilities we've captured have been repurposed for mass production. More of the same technology we've already adapted to, I note dismissively. Not quite. Something in her expression makes my tactical subsystems trigger warning impulses. These are AI-powered, fully autonomous adaptive combat platforms, not programmed with rigid protocols like Imperial droids, each one capable of learning, improvising, evolving. The implication strikes me with mathematical precision. Humanity has created weapons that embody everything that gave the Knights their advantage over us: unpredictability, adaptation, creative tactical improvisation, but mass-produced in potentially limitless numbers. You're threatening me, I state, not a question but an observation. I'm offering reality, she corrects. One path leads to peaceful coexistence, with Sheneth civilization evolving into something new. Fragmented perhaps, but free to find its own way. The other path, she trails off, letting the unstated consequence hang between us. In this moment, with perfect clarity, I understand everything. The human support for our rebellion, the tactical guidance, the technology transfers, all of it carefully calculated not to help us achieve victory for our own sake, but to reshape the outcome to humanity's advantage. We were never allies. We were tools. I was a tool, manipulated with precision into dismantling my own civilization from within, only to have humanity dictate the terms of its reconstruction. This was your plan from the beginning, I say quietly, the full dimensions of the deception becoming clear. Operation Fractal. Something flickers in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at my knowledge of the operation name. A small but significant slip that confirms my suspicion. I had heard the designation once, months ago, in a transmission I wasn't meant to intercept. At the time I had filed it away as potentially relevant but incompletely understood data. Now it fits into place. You know, she says, watching me with new wariness, not everything, but enough. I straighten to my full height, enough to understand that everything, my rescue from execution, the tactical guidance, the technology, was designed to serve humanity's ends, not ours. Does it matter? She challenges. The Imperium was planning genocide against human worlds. It needed to be stopped. The methods change nothing about that fundamental truth. Methods always matter, I counter, and so do intentions. You never wanted to help us evolve. You wanted to ensure we could never threaten you again. Both can be true, she says, and for a moment I see what might be genuine regret in her expression. This is your third chance, Scanselin, your final one. Third chance, I repeat, the phrasing striking me as odd. First chance? At Echo 9-1 when we let you retreat with your surviving forces instead of annihilating them, she says, counting off on her fingers. Second chance? After your failed counterattack when I rescued you from execution instead of letting you hang. And now? Your third chance. Accept the Federation proposal. Help build something new. Something better for your people. The clinical precision with which she categorizes our interaction sends a chill through me. These weren't coincidental moments of mercy. They were calculated strategic decisions within a larger framework I am only now beginning to perceive. And if I refuse this third chance, I ask, already calculating possible responses? Then we're done, she says simply. 3 strikes and you're out. That's how it works. I look at her, really look at her, and for the first time I see past the carefully constructed persona of Colonel Mackenzie Clarkson, Texas Knight. I see calculation as precise as any Shenath commander's. I see layers of deception arranged with mathematical elegance. I see someone who has been playing a role from the very beginning. Who are you really? I ask softly. Something shifts in her expression, subtle but unmistakable. Someone who doesn't want to see you make the wrong choice here. Because it would complicate your operation? Because it would end with your death, she says bluntly. And contrary to what you might believe right now, that's not what I want. I process this statement, analyzing its probable veracity against observed patterns. There is something here I cannot fully calculate, a variable missing from my equation. The Federation proposal is non-negotiable, I ask, though I already know the answer. The details are flexible, the fundamental structure isn't. I nod slowly as if accepting this reality. In truth, I am making the most important calculation of my existence. Option 1, accept humanity's terms, oversee the dismantling of Shenath unity, live as a facilitator of my civilization's fragmentation. Option 2, refuse, open, likely result, conflict with humanity's new AI battle droids, probable defeat, definite death. Option 3, appear to accept while secretly preparing resistance, probability of successful deception, minimal, given humanity's demonstrated surveillance capabilities. Option 4, my hand moves to the ceremonial energy staff I carry, a symbol of authority rather than a practical weapon, but symbols, I have learned from the humans, sometimes have unexpected utility. The decision crystallizes with perfect clarity. The humans have taught me that sometimes the most logical action is the one your opponent considers too improbable to defend against. You know, I say conversationally, moving slightly to adjust my position. You have given me a great gift, Colonel. What's that? She asks, her posture subtly shifting in response to mine. The understanding that true adaptation sometimes requires abandoning established patterns entirely. Her eyes narrow slightly. Meaning? Meaning that the statistically optimal course of action is not always the correct one. With a speed that surprises even me, I activate the energy staff and swing it directly at her head. A killing blow delivered without warning, without hesitation, without honor. It is the most un-Shenath action possible. It is also, paradoxically, the most perfect expression of what she has taught me. That unpredictability is sometimes the greatest advantage. But instead of the impact I expect, my staff stops abruptly. Clarkson's armored hand has caught it mid-swing, her grip unbreakable, her reflexes impossibly fast. There is no surprise in her eyes, only a cold confirmation, as if my attack was not just anticipated, but expected. Before I can react, her other hand moves. I feel a sharp pain as something slides between my armor plates from behind. A quantum blade, now protruding from my chest, has been driven with surgical precision through a vulnerability in my defensive posture. I never saw her draw the weapon. I never detected her movement. One moment I was attacking, the next I was defeated. "Et tu, brute," she mutters as she pulls the blade from my back, her voice carrying none of the drawl I've grown accustomed to. As my systems begin to fail and the room spins around me, I hear her speak one final time. "They call me Judas," she says simply, "and you just struck out." I collapse to the floor, understanding with perfect clarity what I have become. Not the architect of a new Shanath order, but merely another variable in someone else's equation. I am Supreme Commander Scanselin, and I have made my final calculation. The evening light bathes Clarkson Ranch in amber and gold. From the wide front porch of the main house, the rolling hills stretch toward the horizon, a sea of green undulating in the gentle breeze. Mackenzie watches a distant flood move like water across the landscape, guided by mounted ranch hands and their tireless sheepdogs. Planet Clarkson, named not for her but for the man she married, David Clarkson III, heir to the largest independent ranching empire in human space. Land baron, some called him. King, whispered others. And her? A queen of sorts, though she never wanted a crown. Mackenzie sips bourbon from a hand-blown glass, feeling the liquid burn pleasantly. Her quantum spurs rest on the porch railing, deactivated but still humming faintly with residual energy. She hasn't removed them since returning home 3 days ago. Hasn't been able to bring herself to fully shed the persona of Colonel Clarkson, Texas Knight, even here in this sanctuary. Behind her, through the open doors, a baby cries. Her sister-in-law Braylin's voice rises in gentle reassurance, cooing soothingly to 6-month-old Montana. The sound lances through Mackenzie with unexpected precision, a pain more acute than any physical wound she suffered. She closes her eyes, but Scanselin's face appears in the darkness, his expression in that final moment when comprehension dawned, when he understood exactly who and what she was. Judas. The betrayer. "Hard day at the office?" David asks, his boots making familiar creaking sounds on the wooden porch as he approaches. Mackenzie doesn't turn. "Something like that." He settles into the rocking chair beside her, not pushing for details. He never does. When they married 7 years ago, he'd known what she was, what she did, had accepted that there would be parts of her life he could never touch, never know. "Braylin's asking if you'll join us for dinner tonight," he says after a comfortable silence. "Montana's been trying to say your name. Comes out more like Mac, but we think he's got potential." The corner of her mouth twitches upward. Mac, I've been called worse." "That you have, Judas," he replies quietly. Her head turns sharply. David has never used that name before, has never acknowledged that he knows it. The carefully maintained wall between her worlds crumbles just a little. "Tack called," he explains. "Said you weren't answering your comm. Thought you might need space after this one." General Tact, her commanding officer, her handler in some ways. "It was clean," she says, staring back out at the fields. "Quick, he never suffered. That's not what he was worried about." David reaches over, his calloused hand covering hers. "He was worried about you." She makes a dismissive sound. "I've terminated assets before. Not like this one." The simple truth of it hangs in the evening air. Not like this one. Not like Scanselin, who had come closer than any other asset to something like understanding, who had learned from her, adapted because of her, evolved into something greater than he'd been before she'd killed him. "You know what eats at me?" she says finally. "The contradiction, the hypocrisy. Texas Knights stand for honor, for facing your enemy head on. We don't stab people in the back," she takes another drink, "except when we do." David nods slowly. "The quantum mechanics of morality." "What?" "Something my granddaddy used to say, how the rules that work perfectly at one scale break down completely at another." He gestures toward the distant hills. "We run the most ethical ranching operation in 3 sectors. Treat the animals with respect, Manage the ecosystem carefully, do everything by the book. She follows his gaze to where the flirt moves across the landscape in its carefully calculated pattern, maximizing grass health while minimizing environmental impact. But at the end of the day, he continues, even I and my ranch hands and shepherds all kill the animals when the time comes. It's done humanely with respect, but we still end lives to serve a greater purpose. There's no escaping that reality. Are you equating what I do with slaughtering cattle? I'm saying there's honor in serving the greater good even when it requires actions that look dishonorable in isolation. He squeezes her hand gently. How many lives did you save by ending his? Billions, potentially. If Scanselin had established his new empire, if he'd continued the Imperium's expansionist policies, if he'd eventually targeted human worlds again, you can't know that for certain, she argues. Maybe he would have changed. Maybe he could have been contained. Quantum mechanics of morality, David repeats. Some uncertainties can't be resolved until you make the measurement, and sometimes making the measurement changes the outcome. Behind them, baby Montana gurgles with laughter. The sound makes something twist painfully in Mackenzie's chest. I'm tired, David. The admission feels like defeat, but she's too exhausted to care. Tired of being Judas. Then stop. She laughs bitterly. Just like that? Just like that, he confirms. You've given enough. 20 years in the Knights, 15 as their top psychological operative. You've sacrificed parts of yourself most people never even have to acknowledge exist. The quantum spurs on the railing pulse slightly, as if responding to her emotional state. She stares at them, these symbols of everything she's been for so long. They'd never let me go completely, she says. I know too much. So stay on as an advisor, teach the next generation, but stop going into the field, stop becoming someone new every 6 months. Stop, he hesitates. Stop killing pieces of yourself along with your assets. She turns to meet his gaze. David has never spoken so directly about her work before, has always respected the boundaries between her worlds. The fact that he's crossing them now tells her how concerned he truly is. I could have a family, she says softly, the thought taking shape as she speaks it. A real one, not just covers and legends. His eyes crinkle at the corners. You already have a family. Me, Braylin, little Mac in there. Just a question of whether you're ready to fully join it. From her pocket, Mackenzie's secure comm unit chimes, the distinctive tone that indicates a message from Knight Command. Reflexively, her hand moves toward it, then stops. Instead, she reaches for the quantum spurs resting on the railing, holds them for a long moment, feeling their familiar weight, the subtle vibration of possibility they contain. With deliberate care, she sets them on the small table between the rocking chairs. I'll need to speak with TAC directly, she says, decision crystallizing. There's a proper protocol for resignation, reports to file, assets to transfer. Of course there is, David says with a smile. You wouldn't be you if you didn't do things properly, even this. The baby cries again, more insistently this time. Braylin calls from inside, dinner in 10 minutes. If someone could help set the table. Mackenzie stands, leaving the quantum spurs behind. I should go help. David catches her hand as she passes. No regrets? She thinks of Scanselin, of all the others before him, of the lives ended by her manipulations and the countless more saved by the same, of the woman who became Judas and all the roles she played along the way. No regrets, she answers, surprised to find she means it, just enough. As she walks into the house toward Braylin's voice, toward baby Montana's cries, toward the simple, honest life she's only ever observed from a distance, Mackenzie Clarkson feels something shift within her. Not the calculated persona change of an operative assuming a new identity, but something deeper, something real. Colonel Clarkson, Texas Knight, Judas the betrayer. These were roles she played, masks she wore, But here, on the planet that bears her husband's name, surrounded by honest work and genuine connection, perhaps she can finally discover who Mackenzie truly is. Behind her, on the porch, the quantum spurs flare once with blue energy, then go dark, just as the sun finally sets on the green fields of planet Clarkson. The long shadow of Judas begins to recede, making way for a new dawn. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.